All right, looks like we are live. Hi, everyone. Number one Marmaduke fan here. And today, my guest is JC Bihl, the creator of BeatDown Girl. JC Bihl, he worked in the Navy where he taught himself drawing. He's been studying at the Kubert School of Cartooning and Graphic Design. And he is just working up a storm on BeatDown Girl today. And he'll actually be live drawing while we have our conversation. So I am super stoked.
Hello there.
So JC, tell everyone a little bit about how you, I guess, first got started drawing. How'd you get started really seriously drawing and doing comic art?
So, oh boy, that's a question. So when I was in middle school, and this is probably going to give away my age a little bit, we had some my school library actually had some comics in plastic bags that were like back issues and stuff. And there was actually a X-Men number 11, which was the last comic Jim Lee ever drew, and for Marvel. And it had a cool cover of him and the X-Men on it. It had like Wolverine like flashing his claws at the screen. And one day I just tried drawing that cover and I got pretty close and I was super impressed with myself. And so that's how I started. I didn't really care. I was just like, oh, I did this thing. And then got distracted by video games and other stuff. So I didn't really think about it much for a while. And then I did go in and then I went to college. I went through high school and went to college, and then didn't get back into drawing really until seriously till I got in the Navy. I got a sketchbook, and it was kind of perfect because when you're in the military, there are times when there's downtime, but it's like it can run anywhere from like 5 minutes to like 8 hours, right? Where you have to, they say, hurry up to wait. And so, especially on an aircraft carrier in the Navy, you could just be sitting around because nothing happens, or you can, sit down for 5 minutes and then suddenly you have to go repair a UHF radio, and that could take you, between like 20 minutes to 6 hours. And so, having a sketchbook, I was able to sketch, in that erratic time period. And one thing I found is that I had to draw as fast as possible, and so. That variation, I guess, in time, I was able to and also just doing it for 6 years straight, I got pretty good by the time I got done with my enlistment. So
tell us a little bit about the genesis of BeatDown Girl.
BeatDown Girl started about, actually she started as a project at my school about 2 years ago. My first, one thing about the school I go to is that it's rather than having like junior year, freshman year, they actually have first year, second year, third year. And so in my first year class, we had to actually do a character design, and the requirements for it was we had to do a male and a female character, and they had to have an interesting silhouette, and we actually had to draw them naked. And then we would have to put tracing paper over the top and then draw their costume on top of their anatomy. And so I got into this whole idea, like if you see what I'm working on here, I got this whole idea of having these cool shoulder pauldrons and then this thin bar instead of a bicep or the muscle mass here. And actually when I first drew BeatDown Girl, she didn't have the mechanical arm. She just was like a generic superhero, and she had actual, muscles and arms and everything. And the design of her, I was drawing her skeleton underneath, and I was like, wait a minute, like this whole big, medium, small thing here, I was kind of digging this. And so on her arm. And so I thought, so I was like, well, maybe she lost her arms and she's a cyborg. And then that started developing her whole story in my head as to how it happened, and that's how she started.
I love that. So the act of drawing helps you kind of feel out who the character is and what she might be about.
Yeah, everything has to happen for a reason. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fix her proportions here real quick. So, but this will show what I'm talking about. But like when you think about machinery and stuff, right? There's this bar, and then there's this. You think how things attach. So like there's maybe this bolt here that tightens the bar onto a cylinder, and then you have to think, how does the joint work, right? Because I'm going to bring my arm into view here. Do you see my arm?
Mm-hmm.
So this is, our arm is a hinge lock joint, right? So knowing that about human anatomy, I hate it when I use my Blackwing, but basically knowing it's a hinge lock joint, I then know that I can put a dowel through here, right? And this becomes her hinge lock joint, even though it's mechanical, right? So even though she's mechanical in her arms, her mechanics as how she moves are still based on human anatomy. Like even her little circle, even her little her circular joint here is actually what we call a ball socket joint, just like our shoulders, our shoulder bones. So that's why she has that. This is like a, if we were to look inside her, I'm going to go ahead and draw inside. If we were to look inside her, this dowel is actually, you know, on a ball. And then this cup thing, you know, is where the bar dangles out of her. And then if I was to imagine the inside, right, I could imagine, like, because I know electronics, right, I can imagine three what we call stators in like a motor. And because they are sending current, right, they magnetically control the direction that ball swivels to, you know. So I think about the mechanics of things when I do them.
It's yeah, it's a very good principle. It's understanding what's underneath the surface, so that informs you as you draw what's on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So BeatDown Girl, I get a strong Battle Angel Alita vibe, but maybe what's kind of an interesting contrast is BeatDown Girl has these very obvious mechanical arms, whereas Alita has a bit more of a sleek and humanoid form. And as you mentioned, that came across kind of as you were drawing the character, you learned some of these things. So tell us about the Indiegogo campaign. And by the way, if you're joining us, the link for BeatDown Girl's Indiegogo campaign is in the description below. So there's a lot of, I'm very excited about this one. As I read more and more of it, you've got great stretch goals coming up. You've got a lot of fire and passion, and I can see it in your work. So tell us about the comic itself. What can people expect when they read BeatDown Girl?
What they can expect is that it's going to be possibly a little narration heavy, because I'm fitting a lot of story into 32 pages. One of our higher stretch goals is to actually stretch that out to 42 to 48 pages. But part of what's going on is that the narration is from her perspective, so it's not going to be like later or elsewhere. It won't be event-driven story. It's going to be definitely told from her perspective. In regards to like learning her civilian name, it's going to be done through her dialogue with the other characters, and it's not going to be like overtly, like, everything's going to hopefully seem natural. The dialogue is going to seem natural. It's going to seem how people talk. The story is going to have some cool twists, which I've already showed you earlier that I hope the audience will be happy with. Yeah, it's a story about these rogue AI. They're called Frakes, which stands for Free and Rogue Artificial Intelligence Code Snippets. And basically, they most of them are just random code viruses on a network called the CellNet, which is basically what comes after the internet. It's basically like a secure network of cell phone towers, and not like cell phone towers, but these are like big hockey stick looking. You'll see them on the art sometimes. Like, let me see here. They don't play a big role in the story so far, but they might be a location. But like in this page here, the first page, this thing is a CellNet tower, and basically these are strewn across the land. And because they do line of sight, what we call line of sight communication. Your cell phone towers that you do today do line of sight communication too. Like if you're outside of a line of sight from your cell phone tower, your cell phone will go dead. So, but let me see, where else do I have? Like on this poster drawing, this one is probably just going to be a drawing for whatever, but I got them here. So that's part of the overall universe is the CellNet, and it's also the way commerce happens in the society. Still, like they still kind of depend on like cryptocurrencies and stuff for payment, but these rogue AI go through it, and then from these through the network, they end up infecting worker robots and combat robots that help protect the cities. And Beatdown Girl is usually in the capacity of hunting them down and destroying them, or as she explains, if these AIs find that the body they're using is totally useless, they'll destroy themselves. And but things get weird right off the bat, because this robot she ends up fighting at the beginning that you'll see in the video, he's actually super perverted, and he's like commenting about Beatdown Girl's breast size and wanting to see her naked and stuff throughout the story. And she's like trying to figure out, why is this robot so perverted? And when she turns in the robot to to have its AI removed or whatever, they immediately order that it be destroyed rather than, storing it or doing their normal procedure. So it kind of kicks off a mystery where she's trying to figure out why these rogue AI are starting to develop personalities and even like, emotions like lust and desire. Cause like, robots can't reproduce, so they have no biological drive for those things. And so she ends up discovering, some stuff that's pretty crazy about I really don't want
to about the world she's living in. So
yeah,
I had the chance to read the first 2 pages, and these first 2 pages also make up the video for your campaign. So there shouldn't be any major spoilers contained in that. But of interest to me is that you have a kind of a lighthearted sense of humor to her fight with the first robot she encounters, but then you also commit to those things having some real world implications and a sense of mystery. So you've got a lot of the elements, I think, of a solid action adventure story. We've got a character, you're focusing on the character's kind of internal monologue to tell the story. We've got an opening villain who's got this sort of comedic, sort of Japanese pervy Master Roshi aspect to its character. And then we've got this added mystery. You also discuss in the Indiegogo that there are some, beyond just like fighting and the humor of it, there are also some interesting themes informing your work. So it has that post-apocalyptic vibe, but you're really interested, it sounds like, in how the generations, how one generation interacts with another, and how you kind of have to like take on a burden from the past generation.
Yeah. Basically what's happening is the character, one of the characters also introduced early on is in flashbacks actually is Beatdown Girl. Her name's Abby. We'll go ahead and reveal her name's Abby. Abigail Altman, because we're doing the Stanley thing, so I don't forget the name. But she's her parents were actually like in charge of the city that she is currently staying at, and they were basically like kind of like party leaders, or almost like dictators. And she was a piano player and an artist, which also adds a layer of tragedy because now she can't play the piano. And her grandmother is actually died, but she's an AI that lives in something called an ancestor shrine. And so in this universe, there's these things called ancestor shrines, where basically kind of like from the Chinese tradition, you go and worship your ancestors. You pray to them, commune to them for advice, And so in this society, the way it works is people go to their ancestor shrines. So actual artificial recreations of the personalities of people that have died can actually advise them, right? And so she plays piano for her grandma, and they have a nice relationship, even though her grandma, is an AI, and her grandma, is obsessed with her, being an artist, and being a piano player. And so, these ancestor shrines become very important in the story because it's a story about, you could see it today. Even, I mean, I'm not going to get big into politics, but like, in today's society, I think one thing you're seeing is, you're seeing that a lot of the politicians we have, regardless of what side you're on, they're getting older and older, right? Like we have politicians that die in their 90s in office, right? And I think part of what they're doing is they don't want to, say relinquish, like the baby boomers don't want to relinquish power to the Gen Xers because, I guess from like a perspective, like you could say, the baby boomers were pretty much hippies, right? And they were so excited to see what the Gen Xers would do, in the early 2000s with power. And, and the Gen Xers basically became, the neocons. And so like, so the hippie baby boomers are all upset that the Gen Xers are, now a bunch of neocons. And so it's that kind of thing where basically you have one generation that's older that has a totally different political belief, and they're trying to hold on to power so long that, they can basically outlast the generation that came after them, so they don't have to succumb to that philosophy of the new generation. And the people who are surviving in Riverstown, which is the main city the story takes place in, it's a city where people have survived by what I guess we'd call it voluntary exchange. So like we're basically they kind of they don't necessarily barter. They have a currency, but they survive because they are helping each other rather than dependent on the city state that controls them. So they're going outside the system to survive.
You're adapting some things from real world politics, but this isn't a politics book.
No,
You're adding
not at all.
You're adding the flavor of life to the world that BeatDown Girl lives in, but we're not going to get a lecture.
No, not at all. No, it's going to be this is not going to be like those Marvel comics that are out now, where like it ends with a 2-paragraph speech in 1-word balloon, and and then then the bully at the end is like, I'm sorry or whatever. It's not going to be like, I guess it's not going to be like a Ms. Marvel kind of story. It's going to be.
Or hot dogs mixed with bigotry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not going to be that. No, everything is going to be understated. It's not going to be ham-fisted. This is an adventure story, and it's a mystery, and then it's also a story about letting go. Because I mean, part of what Beatdown Girl has to let go of in this is the memories of people she's lost who technology has extended. Like this stuff is actually happening now, right? Like Google's actually saying that they're working on they can like take all your emails, all your social media, and basically use AI to reconstruct your personality pretty much on point. Except that I don't think that's necessarily true, because people are different face to face than they are on the internet sometimes, and that's also going to be a theme. So it's one of those things where things that are happening. I mean, we're living in a time where people can actually like surf on drones and stuff. So I mean, the technology of today is going to be the past of this book. So
excellent. But before, you and I had a chance to talk about some of our thoughts on drawing and form. And for those who aren't paying close attention, what you can see even as you're drawing it is as you're drawing her costume, you're kind of allowing the details of her costume to follow the shape of her torso. Tell us a little bit about how you think through some of those things, that are in the 3 dimensions on the two-dimensional page.
Okay. Yeah, and actually this might be a fun anecdote. This is not going to be, I don't know if I can fit this into the main story, but in Beatdown Girl's background, because she receives this mechanical arms, these are the source of her upper body strength. And because of that, her pectorals are actually pretty small and underdeveloped. And because of that, her breasts get bigger. So, because she's not working her pectorals, so the fat is actually going to build up there. So I've come up with a really good excuse for wanting to draw big boobs. So
And
So
does this happen gradually over time?
yeah, actually, yeah, no, she's going to be pretty small in the flashbacks because she'll be and that's the other thing, because these things actually weigh quite a bit. Um, that's why she's pretty buff in the legs and everywhere else. Like she's gonna like I'm gonna go ahead and one thing that's really important about drawing when you're doing form, and I'm sure people talk about it, but they don't know what it is sometimes. But the center line, and so like one thing you have to think about is I'm gonna march, and actually I can tell that I kind of misplaced her chin, so I have to actually draw these muscles here called the sternocleidomastoids to connect to the pit of her neck here so I can justify her head being in this direction. And then the center line is actually going to go down her. This adds 3D form to her head, right? So it's going to go down to her chin, and it's going to cut back. I'm imagining this is a marching ant, basically going down her center. And I'll go ahead and try and draw it as a. I'm going to grab a different pencil here real quick.
I still remember when my drawing instructor explained the sternocleidomastoid to us for the first time in class. Because before that, you might just draw a couple of lines on the body and not be sure what the heck they're supposed to do. But once you kind of almost feel it on your own body, then you know where that helps you know where it is on your drawing, and it helps you understand what it's there for.
Yeah. So what we got here is we got the pin of the neck, and I'm going to march an ant down. So I'm going to actually draw this a dotted line. So one thing I'm imagining this thing is like a hill, and this ant is marching along this hill. And so I think about how the fabric is pretty tight here. And actually, I don't like this boob. This boob looks a little too Greg Lamb to me, so I'm going to fix it. I mean, I kind of like Greg Lamb's work, but one thing about it is that he'll do this shorthand for a boob where he just draws one boob on one side and just leaves it. And I'm like,
okay.
I think that's his shorthand for drawing fast, but I like it sometimes. Sometimes I don't.
Sometimes a shorthand artist, it's very elegant, like they're just indicating something, but it also has the consequence that there might be like it might look like details are disappearing if you use a very shorthand style.
Well, sometimes it looks like there's no form, like it just looks like a line that's filled in with color, and you're like, okay, that's cool. But I'm not going to talk bad about anyone on this podcast because I like everyone right now.
Right. Something that might be worth talking about is the artist that you have to be your inker, Mike Sellers, correct?
Yeah, not for the whole book. For our $30 backers and for our $112 backers and our $2,200 backers, the poster is going to be inked by Mike Sellers if we reach our $2,000 stretch goal. So, so it means that basically these nice, even though they're loose right now, pencils I'm working on, a little bit of self-esteem, I hope. They're going to be inked by him, and he's a great inker. He's been working in the industry for 25 plus years, maybe almost 30, and he has a lot of credits on his comic buying listing. Like he has over 135 books. He's worked on his biggest, I think the one he worked on the most was Cable for Marvel back in the 90s. So
it's a really exciting stretch goal, and what I like about it is you're kind of you're a young artist. You're right at the start of your career, and you've already got these great connections. You're working with older artists. You really thought through this. And I think that comes across in how you talk about your work, and even just watching you work on it. We can get. I can tell that you're someone who draws every day, and I really dig that. So I think that. Yeah, you've said it. Mike Sellers has got a long career. If you in the audience haven't heard of Mike Sellers yet, then there actually is a link on the Indiegogo to where you can check out the history of what he's done. You've surely read comic books that Mike Sellers has inked. So that to me was pretty exciting when I first discovered that. And this might be a good time to talk about some of the perks for BeatDown Girl. So something that struck me is that people can get a printed comic book for $10, and that's a really good deal for Indiegogo comic projects. You're doing a quality product, but even for people who are already backing multiple books, it won't be too big a stretch to jump on board the BeatDown Girl wagon, will it?
Yeah, and it's definitely like, it's early adopter pricing, and I'm really grateful to the backers who are supporting on this, because I mean, they're making this happen. It is an early adopter price, but you also you get the MP3 of her theme song, so you're getting more than a comic book. You're also getting an awesome techno song that I wrote for her that it's actually the soundtrack on the video. So if you guys go to the Indiegogo campaign, you'll hear the song. Yeah, I'm going to give that for free. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and tell you this. The other thing I'm going to include, everyone who buys the book or does or buys original art or buys does the package, the $30 package with the poster, even though you're also getting that MP3, I'm actually going to include a license agreement for the MP3, so you can use it for free with all your videos. So like if you need a cool techno song to be a video for your background, I'm going to include a license agreement in there, so you can, just use that song for your YouTube videos. Cause yeah, so I'll include that too.
Or if we're doing a video to celebrate when the comic comes out, that'd be really fitting.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So yeah. So, cause I mean, that's one of the cool things actually about like the progressive house movement with the music, is that I'm losing my voice here from talking already. They do a lot of open source music, and give it away free so people can use it on their YouTubes. And I'm going to do that too with this, because I'm not going to give away the song for free because you guys paid for it and by backing, but I'm going to give you guys the license agreement so you can put in your videos, which is sweet. But one thing I wanted to mention and on there is, if you decide you love the art from BeatDown Girl and you're also a writer yourself, one of the perks on there, it's $2,200, which is kind of a bargain, I think. But if you like the art, I'll draw your comic book next summer after I graduate. I'll draw your comic book before I do my next volume of BeatDown Girl. And then that way there's some of these people who are writers who want to get into the whole comics YouTuber Indiegogo scene. That $100 a page is relatively low end for comic art for your book. So,
and with so many writers in comics Twitter and comics YouTube, I noticed that's a very unique perk. But you've also got you're someone who's got a lot of energy, and I think that someone would be lucky, to have that contributed to their writing project. Let me think. So BeatDown Girl, what we've talked about her is that she's got this really, she's identifiable. You've considered her shape. You've adapted her as you've drawn her. You've considered physics and mechanics in designing her weapons, and you've considered how a character thinks and what it means to tell a story from a certain character's perspective. So maybe this would be a little salty, but what are some of your pet peeves in comic books? What are like bad mistakes to avoid if you want to tell good comic stories?
Let's see. I guess the main thing is show not tell. I know that there's some good books that do both. I think one thing that's underutilized actually is the ability to create irony between an image and the dialogue. Like, I'm gonna grab another sheet of paper real quick. Like, let's say we make I'm doing this really fast and it's bad, but let's say we make a quick American flag, right? And we put a soldier here, something like this. God, this is so sketchy and bad. Oh well.
You're using NP blue, by the way, correct?
No, actually, I'm using light blue because I can see it better than the NP blue. I just use a lighter hand with it, and because the Color Race light blue still is only it's still 100% cyan in Photoshop. So when I remove the cyan channel after it's inked, the blue completely disappears. So I use a light blue instead of a non-photo blue. Non-photo blue actually still shows up in scans because non-photo blue is actually meant for photo stats that they use in old-timey printing, and non-photo blue doesn't show up at all in a photo stat, but non-photo blue will actually show up. Like if you're doing a scan, it'll still show up. You still have to remove it. So I use a light blue.
I've noticed that. So that's interesting. The technology of scanning's evolved, and people who's kind of like move beyond its original use. But if you, by varying your pressure, you can get a similar effect using things like Prismacolor, or are you using Prismacolor then?
Well, here's the thing. Colorase is actually kind of a crappy brand, and Prismacolor bought them. And so, so it's still kind of the quality of the lead is still not as good, but it's erasable, right? So, that's why I use it. So it still lets me erase if I'm light with it. So it's the Colorase brand. So it erases out so it gets pretty light.
Okay, I was scared it froze for a second, but we're fine.
We almost disconnected there.
It was just one of those like seconds of pixelation, and then we're back. When you're hosting a live stream, you always panic when you see pixels.
Yeah, I'm gonna check I'm gonna make sure my camera. Okay, cool. You guys still see my stuff. Oops, I dropped my mouse. All right, there we go.
So something I've noticed Cody Fernandez doing for Jack Irons the Steel Cowboy is he shares his fan art like crazy. Have you gotten any fan art yet for Beatdown Girl?
I've heard about fan art, but no, I haven't gotten any yet. One of my best friends, who I was friends with in the military, her daughter has gotten really into this campaign, and she told me her daughter started drawing Beatdown Girl.
Oh boy.
And so that was really cool to hear. But no, I haven't seen anything on Twitter yet of anyone trying to draw her, but it'd be a nice sentiment. That'd be kind of cool. I'd be like, wow, I have fan art now. That'd be neat.
I've worked as a tutor, so I adore children's art. That would be something worth seeing.
Yeah, well, her daughter's actually like 13 now, and she's actually pretty good. So I mean, it is fan art. I mean, it still has its fundamental issues, but it actually, yeah, it's fan art, and you're like, wow, that could be printed in the back of that could be printed in an old school Wizard magazine or something. So
right, because children are still developing, their skill set and their ability to observe, but that's part of the charm of it, is that you get to see, like a precocious child, especially, they'll sometimes be years ahead of their age group. So I'm always excited, at any stage of development, to see that kind of thing. So, well, good for you. Well, I'm hoping you get to see some more fan art soon for Beatdown Girl, because she's a visually striking character, and you're thoughtful about her, and I think that's going to come across to people who check out this project.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about, you don't have to get too much into brass tacks, but maybe for people who are thinking about working on their own comic or using Indiegogo, what are some of the things you've learned doing the maybe more business side of it? What have you learned about, sharing and marketing your work?
Yeah. So one thing I found out is, yeah, you're going to find out that depending on how many followers you have on Facebook, that's going to be primarily where you get your friends and family involved. They say it's good to have them involved right on the first day, because they can get you on the trending page. And that actually happened. I mean, I had a couple donations from family, and I also had I actually had a big outreach from my shipmates in the Navy who got excited about what I was doing. So I got, one thing I did do is actually in the Navy and in the military in general, you get paid on the 1st and the 15th. So I made sure I started my campaign. I think I started a few days after the 15th, so I knew that my shipmates still had money. And then during this campaign, there'll be 3 military pay periods before it ends. So I actually am. This is more. I don't know if you could call it devious or just good marketing, but I basically update my shipmates about the campaign right after the 1st and 15th of every month. And then, the other thing that we do is with Twitter, I do something called Twitter wrangling, which is you have to. One thing that was kind of cool, I saw, what's his name? I saw John Malin on the Umbrella Guy, and he was talking about making sure you put in the work to engage with the community, right? And I don't know how well I'm coming across on video, but I felt maybe I wasn't the best kind of like YouTube kind of person. So I thought I would just engage with the community directly through Twitter. And one of the ways I did that was I created an account for BeatDown Girl. And so she's basically like this low-key-esque figure who likes to troll people who are comics fans, but in a nice way. She's a roaster, and she roasts because she loves. But basically we have kind of like this thing going where I'm a struggling comic book artist trying to get in the industry, and she's my character, and she's constantly getting me into trouble on Twitter. And so I have to scold her, in front of everyone on Twitter. And some people think it's kind of funny.
She likes her memes spicy, huh?
Yeah, she totally does. One thing she did is she went after she went after SJWs are for kids. If you've ever seen him on Twitter, but she said that his avatar looked like she liked to get hugged from behind. And then I had to be like, darn it, BeatDown Girl, I'm never going to get work because of you. And so
do you know her username off the top of your head?
SJWs are for kids, or at BeatDown Girl?
At BeatDown Girl. Is that it?
Yeah, she says at BeatDown Girl. That was like one of the reasons why I did it. Like when I was thinking about doing this about 4 months ago, I looked up on Twitter and I looked up at BeatDown Girl, and no one had. I'm like, oh, I'm so making her an account. So it was one of those things where no one ever thought to use BeatDown Girl as a Twitter handle. So I was like, sweet.
Well, that's smart. Just, snatch it up so that you don't end up like poor Donald Trump and end up being. If you waited a few years, you'd probably be real BeatDown Girl when you finally decided to get one for her. So that was some foresight. So I like that you considered you're using social media, that you are involving friends and family and your shipmates in your work. Tell us a little bit about have your Navy experiences informed you at all as you've worked on this project?
They have, mainly through the job. Well, actually, I could say that some of the political nature in the military, like while there is a noble aspect to the whole one ship, one fight kind of idea. One thing that happened while I was in the Navy is I went from being kind of a centrist to like a total libertarian while being in the military, because I never knew what it was like to have every aspect of your life controlled. And when that happened, I kind of, I have this thing where, I kind of get outside of myself, and I go to my rational self that looks at how I'm acting. I'm like, am I all right? Am I being cool, or am I being, lame or whatever? And so during my military experience, I was like, man, I'm fighting for freedom, and yet I can't, I have to, especially during boot camp. I mean, it's like, you don't have to ask to go to the bathroom, but it's like, you have to ask your RDC, your recruit division commander, if you want to sneeze, and so it's one of those things where that total loss of freedom made me realize how important, free speech and being able to criticize things is. And that's part of the reason why I think the comics YouTubers are so cool, is because, you don't care what politics someone has. You just, you guys go after books when they're bad, and you praise books when they're good. And so.
And boy, I really love the opportunity YouTube gives for me to just talk to people about the projects they're working on. I got into YouTube because I had always been a comics fan and was working on primarily illustration, but also kind of comics on the side. And for me, there was something exciting about becoming knowledgeable of the new comic scene. And I've discovered so many fascinating, unique projects. And for me, it feels like what it must have been like to just be there when Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was still just kind of a joke, you know, that they made at the expense of Daredevil before Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles became this, you know, mega $1 million franchise phenomenon. There is something very exciting to just seeing people work and create things that they're passionate about. Whether or not you get, you know, Star Wars or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles money, it doesn't detract at all from just the impact of seeing independent work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even though you can look back on it and see the artwork early on, and it is not that great. One book I love is James O'Barr's The Crow, you know, and that became that movie with Brandon Lee. But I love The Crow, the graphic novel, because by the end of that book, I mean, it was one of those projects where when he started out, it was really fresh. And then by the end, he was wash drawing, you know, wash drawing flashbacks with really good anatomy. And you're like, wow, you know, and so I kind of hope that happens with this book, where basically I'm starting out right now. And this is my first publishing book. And I was really fortunate to start my Indiegogo when I did, because again, with what Diversity in Comics and what Ethan Van Sciver's doing, what's cool with what they're doing with Indiegogo is my book basically is getting suggested to his audience through Indiegogo's emails, because they've already blazed this trail. And also when it comes to impulse buying, you know, your credit card information is already in your Indiegogo account. So I think as an externality of what these guys are doing, these YouTubers are doing, you know, a lot of indie artists are benefiting because, you know, Indiegogo is suggesting our projects to their audiences and stuff. So that's kind of neat.
Tell us some things that you've learned about art, even if it's just while working on art. So you've mentioned Ethan Van Sciver and Diversity in Comics. Have either of those channels or anyone else in comics, Twitter or YouTube, have they helped you think through artistic problems? Have they helped you think critically about your own art?
Ethan's channel does for sure, because I mean, earlier on, before he went into the Star Wars thing, he was doing, you know, Comics Artist Pro Secrets and doing those reviews, right? And his reviews of art, you know, you can take those tips and be like, oh yeah, that's one extra thing I got to know. The other thing about it is, I mean, they're also reinforcing what I'm learning at the school I'm going to. So, I guess one thing is I'm using Copic multi-liners a lot more, also, but I actually ink with nibs most of the time, but yeah, I think so. I mean, you're going to find that if you're learning from a comics pro in general, once they have a lot of experience, they're going to be speaking the same language. So like, I mean, Ethan is just telling the same kind of stuff that I would learn at the Kubert School. Like it's stuff I've heard a million times before. So if anything, it reinforces what I'm already learning. So I guess if you're using YouTube or those guys to definitely talk about art, they're not going to steer you wrong. I think the main thing about Diversity in Comics channel is he's like the best editor that's not an editor. He'll draw, you know, he'll correct someone's perspective on a book.
Right. It's the difference between having a critical eye for your own work and maybe internally knowing how to adjust your own drawing, which can be very difficult. I think that might be one of the most intensely difficult things, because that's internal knowledge. So that's why you kind of have to measure and, you know, use two points perspective to figure out things like that. I guess that, you know, great impressionists, they could just go set up their easel and bolt out a landscape or a cityscape, just going by eye. But you have to use sort of critical thinking skills, almost mathematics skills, to correct for things that the brain just wants to fudge up.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where basically, yeah, that's one of those things where basically, you know, you have to do your drawing, walk away from it, come back, and then look at it. One thing one thing I'm doing, like if this thing wasn't taped down, I could actually just flip it and turn on my light box, and when you see something mirrored, you know, it'll all the problems will pop out at you. So I mean, it's kind of like that thing. I think part of what DNC is calling people out on is basically the lack of editorial guidance that these artists are getting that are working on the books he roasts. So,
and it's possible that there may be no way to go back. I mean, if I think he was just talking in a video recently that for this in the 70s, they all had to share a studio space, right? And you know, John Romita could, you know, poke his head around the cubicle and see what you're working on and make fun of your proportions. But when your talent is spread out, or everyone's just working at home and sending it in via the internet, you don't have the opportunity for someone to kind of make fun of your proportions mid work on the fly. I think that's a strength of art school itself, is you have students looking at your work and, you know, making fun of you a bit if you're going off the track.
Yeah, there is true. Like there's students who can help, and then sometimes there's some students who, you know, they'll give a suggestion, and you'll be like, I don't know, but definitely with teachers, for sure, you want to take their input most of the time. I think I think more about the internet causing issues is part of the model now with comics is to seek talent outside of the country because you can pay them less and get them over the internet. And so I think a lot of like deviant art searching and a lot of Tumblr searching happens for artists. And then because what they're thinking about is getting the bottom line on the comic as low as possible. And so as a result, you know, yeah, you're only communicating with someone through email. But I think also that also means you're getting the best people in the world, not just America, which should be better. So I think part of it is actually a lack of, and I don't want to criticize any editors too much because I'm just starting out, but I think part of what needs to happen is editors need to be more involved with their artists, like even if it's a video chat or maybe even learning Photoshop enough so you can draw a red circle around what's wrong and send it back to them, you know, because I feel like that basically it's become kind of almost like a money ball game, but like you're not getting talent out of it. You're getting just lower costing art that's cheap and may not look as good, or the storytelling may be awful. So.
And that has a continuing effect where they put out the trade paperbacks or they put out the hardcovers, it's still going to look like cheap art. If you invest the capital in making good art now, you have a better product 30, 60 years down the road.
Yeah. I mean, you have to think about it from the perspective. Gosh, I didn't want to get into, I don't want to say too much about what I think about what's going on with certain companies, but I think part of the strategy for some of them is, I think part of the reason that they've gone so politically slanted is because for these bigger companies that are making movies on the properties, they have to, with the movies, they have to appeal to everyone, right? They have to appeal to people in the middle of the country, to people on the coast at the same time. So the stories are very middle of the road. But then I think they're worried about the press calling them out about how universal the stories are and how they're not politically slanted enough. And so I think part of the strategy is that the companies are actually making the comics way more politically slanted, so they can appease, you know, reporters at certain blogs and stuff. So I think that's part of what's going on, at least with the writing. In terms of the art, I think, and because they know that the stories are not going to be as good, because they're trying to do that, I think they're basically getting artists on the cheap. So because they know that the book isn't going to sell anyway, but it's going to do the damage control they want with the media. So I don't know if that sounds cool or not. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but
I'm sorry. I was looking at the live chat to see if I had any interesting comments or questions for you. Someone comments that EVS never went to art school. OG Dweeb That's interesting. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, EBS is just a rock star. He's talented and he's drawn his whole life, so that
There
makes
is
sense.
there is an element where there just has to be passion and there has to be a time commitment to it. The art school, I believe, helps people because it gives them focus. It gives them experience from an older person. It gives them a really good reason to get the work done. But if you can't afford art school, then don't. I wouldn't go into debt.
Yeah,
Because the important thing is to just
honest.
get rolling.
Yeah, I actually don't think. I mean, I'm in a nice situation because yeah, my military service I don't have to pay for college, so that's part of the reason why I went. So because basically it was like I got done with my enlistment, and then basically they gave me the GI Bill, and I was like, okay, I can learn anything I want, and I don't have to pay for it. So that was I was like, well, I always loved comics, and I'm drawing better than I ever had at that point in the Navy, and I was like, let's try this, and so I got in, and I was like, yeah, so it's been pretty great. But I would never go into debt to go to art school. If I had to go into debt to go to art school, I wouldn't do it because there's so many great YouTube channels right now that you can learn art from. I don't know if you've ever heard of the website Proco.
No, I haven't. Tell us about it.
Okay, so Proco is a website by a guy named Stan Prokopenko, and he is like the best YouTube artist when it comes to explaining anatomy. And he all his videos, most of his videos are free, and then his pay models, he does the Patreon, and then he also has a subscription site for even more in depth. But basically, he's a good resource. Like if you've forgotten your anatomy homework or something, like you can watch his videos, and he explains to you how you know all the muscles work. He explains to you all the eyes. He explains to you the Loomis head method for drawing the head. Like he goes into depth about everything in terms of anatomy. So that YouTube channel is called Proco, Proko, and I honestly, if I had, yeah, like it's one of those things where if I had a choice between going to debt for college or just paying $70 to check out a website to learn everything I need to know about anatomy, I would just, you know, check out the YouTube channel and do that. I didn't mean to give him a commercial, but he's really good for learning anatomy.
It's worthwhile to think about contemporary artists like that who are inspiring you. I'm sure you're familiar with Andrew Loomis then through
Oh,
that. Yeah, fantastic.
Well,
I actually didn't know of him until recently. I studied Bridgman was kind of like our main guy when I was in drawing class, and then I started collecting art books, and I discovered Loomis through collecting a variety of art books. So that was kind of an exciting discovery for me.
yeah, Bridgman's drawings are great, and his exclamations are a little bookish. What's great about Loomis is that just about every page, what he's explaining is also drawn, and like I mean, what I'm doing right now with the Loomis head method here, right, is I got a sphere for her head here, and then I'm cutting off the side of it to show the cerebrum by putting a circle here, right? And in the circle here, I go across and I have where her nose is going to be. And then the top, I have where her hairline starts. So even if this is actually a good way to check yourself. If you draw a Loomis head over the top of your current drawing, you can see if you misplace the nose or the mouth or anything. So, and the mouth is right at the base of where that, yeah. Then there's something we have called the dental sphere here. And then, yeah.
One of the things that struck me about Loomis, I think, what am I reading? I think I'm reading Figure Drawing for All It's Worth. And he's very interested in the mindset of an artist. So he doesn't just dumb it all down into pure technical raw data. He's very interested in what motivates an artist and how an artist thinks about the drawing as a problem.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah. He was a commercial artist. Like he was like the most sought after commercial artist in New York. And he was like the most representational artist. I mean, his contemporaries were like, that famous guy who did the paintings, Rockwell, and so his contemporaries were like Rockwell and Frazetta was a kid in during his heyday, you know, but he was also just starting to work in comics too, or work in comics. And but Loomis's anatomy is pretty spot on until you actually get to the bottom of the legs. At that point, he actually is a little off, but I think the best thing Loomis's contribution is actually perspective drawing, because he talks about subdividing planes in a very specific way, so you can place windows and subdivide your planes perfectly. But the other thing he contributes is that his book, Drawing the Hand in Hands. If you learn how to draw a Loomis head perfectly, you have the perfect starting point for doing a likeness, because then once you have the Loomis head construction done, it becomes a measuring game of how high or low the eyes are from the brow bridge, and you know how far off the nose is from that circle line. So if you use Loomis, especially for the head and the hands, like you can get really good at drawing likenesses. But I for like drawing the tibula and the fibula and the soleus and those muscles that make up the lower leg, like he's actually by the end, I think I don't know if he's tired or whatever, but by the end of that book, those proportions are a little off. But I only know that because my art teachers told me so. But yeah, but he's great. He is great.
POTUS Thump has joined the live chat, and he has an interesting contribution. He says that Alex Ross was very much inspired by Andrew Loomis, and his comment is that figure drawing for all it's worth is essentially a good introduction for how to draw like Alex Ross. So thank you, POTUS. He's been doing some very interesting Periscope videos on Twitter where he talks about his process, and he started his own YouTube channel. So I'm expecting big things, huge things on the horizon.
Nice. Yeah, one book I recommend if you're more advanced is Robert Beverly Hale's Anatomy Lessons from the Masters, or Anatomy Lessons from the Great Masters, because once you get in and memorizing muscles and everything and stuff, Robert Beverly Hale, who is a famous art teacher in the 50s, he did this book where he takes these fine art things and he breaks down what the contour lines should look like for those parts of the anatomy. So you can actually like use this as a guide to like get these kind of lines right. Like if I was to look at this, I could go to like Beatdown Girl's calf here and go ahead and just kind of like mimic that same kind of, God, this lead is so light. I'm gonna go ahead and switch to my Blackwing for a sec here so you can see. Also, I don't know if you see it at the angle. I didn't realize how far I'll go ahead and take this off here. Watch, I turn this towards you and all the proportions are off and I'm a terrible artist. Okay. So, but basically like you can kind of mimic the rhythm lines of that master artist. Who is that artist? That artist is Charles Lebrun from 1690. And so Robert Beverly Hale goes through all these amazing like representational figure drawing and shows you, you know, the contour lines that break down what the anatomy looks like. So I'll be using this book a lot as I draw the comic. So hopefully you guys will see the work. And I'm glad POTUS Thump is here because I love his book.
My Hero Macadamia or Black Ops USAGI?
My Hero Macadamia. That book is hilarious.
I introduced it to my roommate just earlier this week, and he dug it. He hadn't read comic books in a while.
That part where there's the wall and the people are coming over a wall. It looks like something from Attack on Titan. I was just like, oh my God.
Anime reference game is on point. Let me think. When I've watched POTUS Thump work, and Timothy Lin is his real name. If you aren't familiar with POTUS Thump yet, but he will. What I was really impressed with was in an ink drawing, he was shading the eye, which I've never been brave enough to attempt in ink. I've done it in painting because, of course, the eye is in shadow. But I've always worried that I'll overdo it and end up with like what looks like solid black eyes or something. So he's really confident in his ability to go into inking. So I'm impressed.
Yeah, I am not. I definitely think if I can afford to at some point, I'm going to be just a penciler. But I mean, I do all right with microns and Copics, but I'm a lefty, and so I've had too many times where I've ruined a piece by dragging my hand over my nib lines and covering half the page in ink. So
You're left-handed, but you're drawing right-handed right now.
Am I drawing right-handed? No, this is my lefty. See, left hand, right hand.
Oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
You're drawing with your right hand. Did your camera get flipped?
No, this is my left hand. So, oh, well, from my angle, I see it.
Okay, I think it must have been flipped because I see you holding your pen in your right hand.
Okay, that's weird. Okay, so this is all reversed for everyone. So I hope it looks all right.
I bet the lefties got really excited right now that you've been a stealth lefty this whole time.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, if you want to keep your pages clean when you're a lefty, if you're heavy-handed, use a 3H lead, and if you're and as you get better and you're lighter with your hand, switch to a 2H lead, and then normally, and just don't erase around it because then you'll expose that you've been dragging graphite everywhere. But yeah, I am a lefty. I'm gonna see if I can fix it real quick on the stream. But yeah, if you have any questions while I'm doing it.
Sure. Let me think. Well, what you're speaking to kind of speaks to me a bit because I feel confident in my pencils sometimes, and I feel confident in my inks, but I don't feel confident in inking on top of my pencils. It's almost like there's a mental barrier to ruining your pencil art. So my workaround has always been just to like use a light table and put a fresh sheet on top of it. So I kind of relieve the mental stress of wrecking my pencils. So some people seem to like that. They like the tension almost of potentially wrecking their pencils, and that kind of gets them a bit more into focus mode or on their game. Have you worked much with, I guess, more loose application or brushwork?
Yeah, actually, that's one thing I absolutely love doing, and I love drawing rocks. Rocks are like my favorite thing to draw, and maybe they're easy and everyone's like, oh, rocks are easy, but I can do like, I'll just do a quick gesture of a rock here. And then I have to determine where the light, okay, so the light's coming from this way. So one thing I'll do is I'll grab my, I love these things because the ink in them is really dark. And because I'm a lefty, it dries really fast. So I don't drag it across the entire page. And so I'll go ahead and just you kind of flick your lines, and then I have to be lighter here. Oh, okay. It's going to be a rock that's forward in space. This composition is changing a little bit, so that's fine.
All right. People were excited by the left hand revelation.
Yeah. No, that's why I can actually talk and draw at the same time, is because there's no translation between my geospatial part of my brain and the part of my brain that has to process words. But the great thing about being right-handed, though, is if you ever have a stroke, you can switch to your left hand and get better. If I ever have a stroke, my career's over. So.
Okay, well, we will pray for your safety on hot days.
Thanks.
Have you looked at Chinese painting at all for inspiration, maybe for landscape? I noticed that their mountains are almost abstract in how they do it. Like they'll kind of like tower and rise into the vertically. So I like mixing and matching my inspirations a little bit. So if Renaissance artists give me like a really good understanding of the human form, Chinese and Japanese artists give me a really good understanding of shape and loose brush application. So are there additional art historical sources you really love in addition to the old masters, clearly?
It depends. Since I'm from a perspective of being a student and still learning how to draw, I would say it's great for composition, but in terms of being able to sculpturally draw a form, it can be, I mean, it can be nice and fundamental if you get your like spheres perfectly, or you get your or that kind of thing. Like if your fundamentals of drawing spheres and squares and clean lines and good line quality, yeah, it's pretty great. But from perspective of learning, if you're trying to learn form, it can, like, it's like those kids who learn to draw anime at first and it's the only thing they can draw, and then you try and have them draw a rock that's representational, and then they freak out on you. So
Yeah.
but I mean, it looks cool. I mean, when it looks good, I love it.
You're starting with your harsh shadows first, it looks like.
Yeah, that's because I made a mistake and I had to cover them up. But also, that's the light source is coming this way, so I'm going to do that. Yeah, because I like this right here, this little dry brushy effect, because it shows the form, but it also defines the shadow plane. So at least I'm thinking about it. I may be a terrible artist and not execute it correctly, but I am thinking about it. And so I'm basically drawing a contour line here. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and do another contour line across, but very lightly, to determine basically the form. And then what I'm going to do is basically every hatch line I'm going to do across here is going to kind of like be based on this contour line I'm doing around. And now it's starting to look like a rock, right? I hope.
Right. It's texture and shadow working together. The texture marks of kind of like the rough feel of the rock also define where light and shadow are separating.
Yeah, and also the other thing is that the texture marks, as you're calling them, they're also going with the form. And so because they're following this kind of like center line I drew across, so I can also do it here. And it's going to look more and more rocky as I go, I hope. And then because I've already established my darkest shadow plane as being that direction, I can go ahead and ink. And then I hope your people are digging this. I don't know. I'm just doing this on the fly.
I definitely got some good feedback on. I've been getting good feedback from everybody. Let's see. Oh yes, of course. By the way, if you are in the live chat, at me if you have like a directly relevant question for either of us. We have 15 watching right now. I'm used to slightly larger audiences. I think that we're fighting with EVS. Unfortunately, I think he seems to have quite a lot of live streams these days. So I'm never quite sure when he's about to go live or not.
No, he definitely deserves the attention. He's a rock star, and he's worked hard on his channel. So I mean, he definitely deserves it.
And it is how a rising tide lifts all boats. The fact that EVS has just brought average, normie media attention to the indie comic scene on Indiegogo, that is going to have an effect. That's going to be a lot of people who checked it out just because they heard, oh, someone made $500,000 on a frog comic book. Let's check out some of these other comic books on this site. So I'm a big rooter for success on all fields for everybody. I want everybody to keep on winning.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like I said, I mean, like I mentioned to you, it might have been off the stream, but yeah, I mean, I kind of stumbled into this community because the comics YouTubers started backing and responding positively to BeatDown Girl on Twitter. So I was like, I followed people back, and I got kind of drawn in, and so I mean, the comics YouTube scene is pretty great.
Now, have you live streamed before, or am I scooping the internet on this one?
No, I have. I tried doing a channel called Drawing and Chill Step, but it's kind of boring. My biggest audience for that channel is actually on a video game site called Mixer, and it's a bunch of gamers who like to basically just listen to dubstep and chill while I draw. So it's all right. It doesn't have a YouTube following at all, but the kids who play video games on Twitch and Mixer seem to like it.
We got an interesting question from Timothy Lynn. He says, why do you he asked both of us, why do you think so many aspiring preteens draw nothing but anime? I'm disconnected from the youth. That's interesting, because I'm sure you've had an experience similar to me, but for me, it was just kind of like the weird thing that, you know, guys would all draw Dragon Ball Z style. How about for you?
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit older student, so I actually was I actually there's some horrible cosplay pictures of me when I was a kid, but I did I was in on that scene pretty early, and I think part of it is because that style of drawing it's pretty accessible, and also I think Scott McCloud, who wrote that book Understanding Comics, he talks about as drawings get more abstract, people connect with them more, because like we can tell from this drawing that BeatDown girl, right, is a woman. She's got some great boobies. She's you know, she's hopefully she'll be anatomically correct except for her arms, which are mechanical, and she'll look good. But we can definitely tell that I look nothing like her, right? Even though you can't see my face, I'm a guy, kind of a pudgy guy, and so I definitely don't look like her, right? But if I draw a circle and, you know, put two eyes and a mouth on it, you know, that could be anyone, right? And so I think the reason anime has its appeal is it's simple to draw at first, relatively simple. Like you could draw an anime character, and then someone will be like, "Oh yeah, that's an anime character," you know. And then, but also more people connect with it because they can project themselves into it more psychologically. Like a anime character who has black hair, right? Any girl who has black hair can connect with an anime character who has black hair because their facial features are so generic. The reader and the viewer can project themselves into the character, right? But once you define the face more, add more details, right, then you start to categorize people who are not that character. And so I don't know if that answer.
Details of the face have a different psychological effect, right? Because I was a late bloomer on Dragon Ball Z. I thought it was the stupidest thing on planet Earth when I was like 9 through 13. And then when I'm 20, I started paying attention to Akira Toriyama's character designs for video games. And I thought that I fell in love with him as an adult because I think he is a cartoonist. Goku has a very particular youthful, energetic look to him. I think that the best advice I gave to like because for me it was a big deal. Like probably about half the students in my class were primarily interested in anime or video game art. And kind of the one point I'd always make is I'd kind of look at a comic with them and I'd say, well, this person can draw a building, they can draw a car. They have to have some fundamental understanding if they're going to succeed in the manga industry. And it just so happens that the popular comic art of Japan emphasizes this sort of adorable, you know, cute, identifiable face. But that doesn't mean that they don't know how to draw from life, looking at the real world around them.
Yeah, that's yeah, exactly. That's I love Akira Toriyama's work. I'm sorry, I lost focus because I was trying to make sure I wasn't screwing up while I was drawing.
No, you're doing a lot. You're doing a lot at once.
Yeah, I know that there's some people, you know, they can't draw and talk at the same time, but their drawings look amazing. So I'm still jealous. But
Carl's Amateur Hour says Dragon Ball is amazing, and Akira Toriyama is one of the best mangakas of all time. I'm definitely glad I finally did get past my childhood hatred of yelling Super Saiyans and fall in love with his work as an adult. Definitely.
Okay. So one thing I decided I'm doing here is I'm going to go ahead and create a ground plane here, which means basically my horizon line is going to be like this. So yeah. No, one thing I love about Akira Toriyama's work is his the guy he's so good at establishing a scene and like when he's introducing a new location that you can know where the story is taking place and not have to see that location for another 3 pages while the characters are interacting with, you know, fairly undefined backgrounds. So like if you want to know how to like establish a scene and draw a great background, Akira Toriyama's guy. Also the manga Battle Angel Alita, right? I think Yoshiro Kitsuro is his name. He draws amazing backgrounds too, and he does them all like in 3-point perspective, and he'll do like statues that are like look like a Leonardo da Vinci statue, but meanwhile there's all these anime characters standing around it. So if you haven't read I don't care if you see the movie, but you should definitely read Battle Angel Alita if you haven't.
I would add to that. I didn't find out about it until I think Loot Anime sent me a copy of it because the movie was coming out, and I was stunned by the attention to detail in Battle Angel Alita. Our boy, Avid Comic Reader, is in the chat. He's kind of the man of the hour because it's thanks to Avid Comic Reader that I discovered Beatdown Girl. He asks, I just bought my first Speedball Hunt Crow quill pen. I'm using Crow quill nibs. I'm having a hard time learning how to use it. Any tips or pointers? So let's see.
If you give me a sec, I'll actually switch to a nib because that sounds like fun. Let's do it. Let me grab my nib. See if I have my Hunt 107 ready. Oh boy. So I have something here called a Nico G nib. It's actually a Japanese nib, and I don't know if I want to use this because this thing is messy, but the lines it makes are great when you do it right. I'm gonna see if I have my article.
I'm kind of out of this conversation because I use nibs for a few assignments in class, but I gravitated a lot more towards brushes or just traditional pens.
Yeah. The main thing with nibs is, I guess if you're heavy-handed, I would use a Hunt 107. And because then it doesn't matter if you're heavy-handed, because with the Hunt 107, you can get thin lines and thick lines. And if you're heavy-handed, that nib will actually fight you. And so that one's pretty good. The Hunt 102 probably gives you the most range of lines, but you have to basically let the weight of the nib do the drawing for the thin lines, because that nib has a lot of give. But also the problem with the Hunt 102s is that Speedball doesn't have the same manufacturer for all their nibs. They actually use multiple manufacturers. And so with the Hunt 102, you have like a 50-50 chance of it being a god-awful nib. So if you're going to use a smaller nib, I would actually recommend a Maru G nib by Nikko, which is Nikko, and you can check those out online because those are way better. Also, one thing I'm doing right now is I'm actually scraping the top of my nib with a fingernail, because if you have a lighter, you'd want to burn your nib, because there's actually a layer of oil they put on it to keep it from rusting, and but it also causes the ink to fall off. So you either want to scrub it with soap and water, or rub it off like I am right now, or you can use a lighter and burn off that first layer. And then the other thing you're going to need is a scrap piece of Bristol. I'm going to go grab one from my pad real quick. Because you're going to want to test your lines before you put them down. And then thanks for being patient while I got my ink. All right, we're going to watch me mess up, because this lefty will drag ink all over his page and ruin the drawing.
No problem. Do you hover? Is that a way that you can avoid that problem?
Actually, no. What I do, if I'm dead set on using a nib, I need to add some water.
My trick was always to kind of focus from going top down, so I wouldn't go over too much of my previous work. What
I actually do is I draw from right when I do the inking. If I'm going to use a nib for the entire piece, I'll do the pencils like outright first. Like I'll get them as tight as I can, and then I'll work from right to left so I don't have to think. And then that seems to work pretty well. Normally the problem is when Sometimes when you're inking, you can get into like I did with the rock. I already got in right away to doing the texture lines, and I still have to finish that rock, but I'll do that. Yeah. So what I'm doing right now is I'm making sure. There's two things you want to do. You want to make sure you shake your nib to get the excess ink off before you start, because otherwise you're going to get these beads that, like, I'll go ahead and, this is how this drawing is going to go. I'm just going to simulate for you now. I'm going to do a couple drawings and I'm going to go, let's see, that's going to happen, but it's not because I already did it. All right. I just did that because I was scared. All right. That's done. So we're going to wait. I hope that was funny. All right. So
it turns out EVS is having a high council tonight. That's why we have 17 joining us now, though. So we've been getting some more new people coming in.
Okay.
If you joined us recently, the link for BeatDown Girl, the Indiegogo campaign, is in the description below. And our boy JC Bihl, he's got. I'm really excited about this project. This is his first comic project. We've just been talking about all kinds of great stuff about our favorite artists, favorite art books, and some of the stretch goals for this project are phenomenal. So you can get a printed, you can get a MP3 of BeatDown Girls at $10. You get the theme song and you get the comic book. And at $30, you get a poster. And let me think. You've unlocked the stretch goal for you're really close to unlocking the stretch goal for a colorist. Is that right?
We're unlocking the stretch goal to announce our second colorist. We have one colorist who's amazing, Sarah Madura, on the front cover. On the second cover, we're going to have a really good colorist. Either when the campaign ends or the stretch goal is unlocked, we'll announce him. And then, but at 2,000 level, we're going to have inker Mike Sellers ink the poster for $30 backers and up. And so,
and for those who don't know, Mike Sellers has worked with Andy Kubert. He's worked on Wolverine, X-Men, Cable as an inker. So that's kind of an exciting little bit of comic history coming into BeatDown Girls project. So I really hope we can, move the needle and help reach that stretch goal.
All right, this is going to be embarrassing, but I found my inking glove, but it's my pink one that came in a pack of 3. So I'm gonna look pretty femmy while I ink here, but that's exciting.
Or just confident in your masculinity. Absolutely no soy. So you're entitled to wear pink from time to time.
Well, I do like soy lattes, but I hate soy boys. So
you're giving a lot of mean material to people. Maybe BeatDown Girl herself will roast you later.
Oh boy, she does. I mean, well, she hasn't really roasted me. She roasts other people, and then I have to apologize for her. So she's pretty spunky.
I kind of click with that because I write a lot of spunky female characters. I think it's a very natural character archetype, but then I draw from real life experience and family to give them a little bit more of the flavor of life to them. So it's always fun. I think that's one of the big appeal of comics is getting to see both this mix of fantasy ideas with the real world. BeatDown Girl is a fantasy character. She's got these biomechanical arms to her, but she also has just a very down to earth kind of girl next door vibe to her. She looks like girls you might know.
Yeah, and that's the thing about her is that well, there is archetypal things. I mean, I don't mean to get into the whole pretentiousness of it, but like Shakespearean stories, right? The characters who are always the protagonists are always of a ruling class station, and her backstory is she's also of a ruling class station, but she's a character who's lost that because her and her family were attacked, but mainly because her parents are and this story isn't too much into the plot at all, but her parents were basically dictators of the city state of her town, and she loses her arms in the attack that kills them, and so she's someone who's lost her status, but she's but because of her upbringing, she's still she has an attitude that she's someone of value, even though she's completely lost it. One other thing that we didn't discuss is the augments, which are basically soldiers that the city state forcibly, removed their limbs and gave them mechanical limbs in order to make them better fighters in something called the AI Wars, which is in the backstory. It's not part of the main story, but the augments are treated like second-class citizens because after the AI Wars, they tried to seize power, and so the people who the regime that actually ended up winning out in that fight basically treats all augments like second-class citizens, and she's treated like an augment because she has mechanical arms and mechanical parts just like them. But she lost them because of an accident, so she was like, but so she's kind of like also caught between two worlds. But there's no like, there's no like subculture group identity politic coming into it. Really, it's just part of the backstory. So
yeah, you've thought about the feel of the world, even like the geography and the landscape, and how in your building designs are have some specifics to them that fit with the lore of the world. I wanted to ask you, so one of your stretch goals is to expand the size of the graphic novel a bit. So can you tell us, without spoiling it, what kinds of things might you expand on if you have the opportunity to lengthen it a bit?
I guess part of what we're doing is because we're telling a story that is a little bit expansive. It's not going to get too far out of the world. It basically takes place in a city called Riverstown that's on the Mississippi River, where basically the town is basically like the sole source of water for the other cities in Eastern America, because it takes in the water was polluted by these robots called sprayers that basically started using chemical weapons to get rid of the humans during the AI wars, and so in order to reprocess the water and make it drinkable, there's this big city with two dams on either side that process the water of the Mississippi and turn it into drinkable water and pipe it out to other cities. So that city has basically kind of become the source of power for the country, even though the governments of North America basically devolved into city states. And so in that setting, basically it's still dictatorial, very statist, very Riverstown has a very statist, dictatorial like regime that's more of an aristocracy of families controlling things, and so they blame the world going to crap on the AI wars and the robots turning on everyone. But as the story goes on, we're going to find it's a mystery, but it is a lot of story to tell. So it's going to be pretty much told from Beatdown Girl's point of view, and there'll be narration and backstory going on without hopefully showing as much as we can without telling too much. But there's going to have to be a lot of some captioning going on to basically fill in the reader with the background information. If we have more pages, we can do we'll be able to slow burn at times at key moments. But one thing I kind of like about older comic books is they actually compress the story pretty well and they're enjoyable. So we're going to try and balance the compression and the slow burn in the storytelling, and hopefully we'll get the right balance. But if it does get expanded to, part of the reason we expand to 40 pages, I'm responding to my backers, and my backers said, man, we'd feel a lot better, spending, $10 if the book had more pages in it. So I'm trying to also, give them as much value as I can. So
that's good. You are responding to things feedback your customers are giving you. You've mentioned in your Indiegogo campaign that this is effectively a summer project, and then you're going to be returning to school for your final year. In your mind, is this world, is it a place we'll visit once for one adventure, or is it a place you might revisit again? Could there be like a trilogy or a saga of stories featuring this character?
Yeah, well, the thing is that the AI wars, may have gone all right for the people in the city states in North America. It may have not gone all right for, say, the Pacific Northwest or the West Coast. So as we go, it's gonna. I don't want it to get Fallout-esque and like all like totally like, you know, broken down, you know, gas stations and stuff. There'll certainly be that kind of thing, but it's going to be like one thing I'm working on that I wish I had it. It's out in the car, but I had a painting I did of BeatDown girl fighting a giant mechanical lizard that's part cyborg, because we got basically in the history of the world, I got robots that are basically assimilating animals and turning them into cyborgs that are becoming like their pets and their soldiers, their army. So like the robots that survive the AI wars in the Northwest are basically building an army of animals to attack the city states in the future. So that'll be exciting.
So nature itself is being weaponized. That's very primal.
Yeah, and it's being weaponized by a force that's artificial, and that's going to be one of the other themes. I don't want to specifically call Beatdown Girl an anti-feminist, except that she's going to make the point that like that her strength is not because of her body. It's not because of her body type or her body mass. It's because of something that was artificially done to her. And so there'll be some moments that are pretty. I'm not going to say they're anti-feminist, but they're pretty pro-gun. Where there's going to be a scene basically where she tells some people that they need guns because, you know, they don't have arms like her. So
this is something I think about a lot because, you know, where I'm from, girls who have guns, they love their guns because they recognize that that's a big equalizer for them. And I think about that a lot because it's helpful to, I guess, empathize with you know, women who do self-defense or women who do firearms training. If you want to do a kick butt girl character, that's a good thing to pay attention to and let it inform your work. So I gel with that a lot.
Yeah, there's gonna be themes that are basic. I mean, I'm pretty much. I really hope there's not a bunch of lefties watching, but I'm pretty much a libertarian and care about self-protection and freedom above everything. And so the story is going to be peppered with themes like that. Like people are going to, it's not going to be preachy. It's not going to be, you know, like a big 2-word balloon speech at the end of a Marvel comic. But what it's going to be is it's going to be, the themes are going to basically show that when people are choosing responsibility and freedom for themselves, their lives are getting better in this dangerous place. And where places where the world is still crap, it's because they're, you know, acting like people who aren't pro freedom, you know. So
Right. And the thing is, I think good fiction leans that way. So you don't even have to be ham-fisted about it. You know, we tend to empathize with characters who have at least some natural goodness to them, even if they're anti-heroes. We don't like anti-heroes who murder babies. We like anti-heroes who murder evildoers. We like heroes who have some genuine goodness to them, and that implies ideas like you know, freedom or preserving life. I can't think of any heroes off the top of my head who are, you know, popular heroes, well-loved heroic characters who go about you know, bossing people around or trying to make people conform people to their vision of the world. That tends to be more of a villainous aspect throughout the history of comics too.
Yeah. I mean, basically, and actually, I mean, I think that's part of what we're seeing right now with comics is that there's a situation where people who have control want to, you know, control culture in a way that you know, that they're trying to basically remake the world in their own image, and they don't necessarily have the right to do that for all of us, right? I mean, people who are customers, people who are creators, we have a right to our own opinion and a right to enjoy a good story without having to have a whole bunch of speeches shoved in our face that, you know, if I would be better served to to a more left-wing perspective if it was, implied rather than spelled out to me, right? So if people want to put politics in their books, fine, that's great. As long as it's like, it's done as a theme or done as a, or just peppered in there a little bit. It's not, it's not spoon fed to you. And so Beatdown Girl is going to not spoon fed any politics to anyone. If it is in the book at all, it'll be in poignant ways that that actually affect the outcome of people's actions, I guess is the way to say it.
Our friend Avid Comic Reader asks if you add water to your ink while you're working at all.
I do, especially when I'm using a brush, because one of the tricks that Frank Frazetta used, like people wondered how his brush strokes were so, he could do a long brush stroke and then make it thick and thin and thick again, right? Part of that is because he actually added water to his ink. What he would do is he'd dip his brush in water, dip it in ink, and then, or dip it in ink, dip it in water, and then back into ink again. And you could get a really long, good brush stroke with that. I usually don't now because I like these things, but because they're fast and they dry quick, and I usually use these for my organics. And then I wasn't thinking about it. I was using a nib on her shoulder pauldrons, but if I was doing this correctly, if I go back to my, if I go back to this here, actually this page is pretty good. So, okay, I can see. Okay. So one thing I did here on her shoulder pauldrons is actually I varied the texture on the outer lines by using microns for just the mechanical stuff, and then I switched to a brush on her legs and like her fabric and stuff here. So everything that's organic I did with a brush, except for her hairlines. Because her hairlines are thick, I went ahead and did those with a micron. But if you use tech pens on your more mechanical things and then use a brush on your more organic things, you'll have a varying in line quality that'll differentiate the two and make it clearer to the reader, hopefully.
That's fascinating, but it actually that fits with how I've used them without me ever clicking that I could mix the two together, because the microns give you a very tight control you'd associate with almost blueprint drawings, or things showing you the mechanical construction of things. And brush is so fluid and gives you such variety that does fit with the feel of the human body, where the human body is essentially made of you can simplify it to straight lines when you're constructing it, but the final form it takes is really this beautiful flowing curve going through everything. I don't know if I've told this story before, but when I was at the Louvre, I was drawing one of Michelangelo's slaves, and a little old French artist spotted me, and he didn't speak much English, but he was very enthusiastic when he saw me studying Michelangelo's captive slave, and he was talking about the English phrase he kept going on about was the flow of line, and then it'd be French, and then he'd come back to the flow of line. It was very charming, because even though I couldn't understand half of what he was trying to say, I think the basics of it came out, that he as an artist was very interested in seeing how you capture something moving through the human form. And to me, that's kind of like the highest beauty that the Renaissance masters were able to achieve, was that not only are they understanding how the body looks, and how the muscles and bones fit together, but their lines are actually kind of working together and moving through it, like breath, like how breath moves through the human body. The motion of their lines is giving I guess extra energy to their drawings. That's it. It's pretty simple. Fluid moving lines, fluid moving figure. They kind of fit together.
So yeah, it's true. And I'm going to go back to the nib for a sec, because I'm still thinking about Avid Common Reader's question. But one thing you can do to make your lines better is you have to make sure when you use the nib, you're snapping and being quick with it. Because if you're confident with the line, you get these really nice, like smooth, let me see if I can, okay, cool, right here. Yeah, you get these really nice, smooth, almost vector-like shapes of the line. If you go at it really slow, And if you go at
muscle spasms come in.
yeah, if you go at it slow, you end up with like kind of a line that this line doesn't look bad for like maybe a rock or something, but the texture of it is not as fluid as if you were doing something that had like a more of a mechanical or even a like an organic or like a female form. Like you want to be very down pull with your line. So, but this nib still has some of that oil on it that I have to get off, so it's not holding ink as well. But
Epic Trilogy asks Copic or Micron.
If I have money, Copic. If I don't, Micron. Actually, one of the cool things about people buying up all these Copic multiliners is the Microns are getting better. I bought a pack of 08s the other day, and they had so much ink in them, and the line was so dark. I was like, wow, Micron's up in their game. I think because EVS, is sponsored by Copic and is selling Copics like mad. I think they're making the whole pen industry better. So let me grab one thing I do for mechanicals, which I'm going to do now. I've actually got some white paint I can use to cover up my mistakes too. But when you're doing mechanicals, you can grab a French curve. And do the line. And that's going to look way more mechanical.
Indie Dave Comics left us, and he says, "I'm back. Erase what you drew and start again from when I left."
You didn't miss much because I'm talking and drawing at the same time, so I'm making a whole bunch of mistakes. I'm either gonna fix this whole thing with some white opaquing paint, or I'm going to throw it away. So, but if it looks nice so far, then it's doing its job for the interview. So.
OG Dweeb noticed that you like the darker pencils and that you use a lot of pressure. So OG Dweeb asks if you like doing that to help you kind of see your own line work better.
Oh, actually, I'm not. What you're seeing is the inks. See
I think he noticed back before though when you were doing your initial pencils. He noticed you use a lot of pressure.
Oh, I don't really like. It doesn't feel like it to me, but maybe he thought he saw me using the Blackwing earlier, and I did use that. It doesn't look like I'm using a lot of pressure to me. This looks pretty light to me, but I'm using a 2H, so I don't know.
It must have been the Blackwing that he noticed.
Okay, so yeah, I grabbed that by mistake. I also this thing also doubles as an animation table, so when I'm not working on comics, I like to animate stuff sometimes, and you use a Blackwing because once you get your final type pencils on an animation page, normally the workflow in that is to vector the Blackwings to in Photoshop and then send them over to After Effects so you can composite the animation. So I had my Blackwing out for that probably, and I just grabbed it on accident.
Carl's Amateur Hour says that anti-hero, if an anti-hero is someone who kills villains, then the Mario Brothers must be anti-heroes. Well, that's interesting. What do you think it would take to make an anti-hero, JC?
That's kind of cool he mentions that. One of the things that happened when I mean, he lived a long life, but when Steve Ditko died, right? I was looking up stuff about him, and he has there's a great YouTube video of Steve Ditko who defines that. And he basically says that an anti-hero is basically any hero that is flawed, like that the heroes that Superman, the old Superman, or even his characters like Mr. A in The Question, right? They're characters of men who are better than us, who serve as examples for how we should be, right? And when a hero fails to do that, he becomes an anti-hero. And readers do empathize with an anti-hero because they are flawed. And so I think the anti-hero is basically, I mean, even like, honestly, I would say like that's part of the problem with comic books right now, is that we have every Marvel superhero is basically an anti-hero for their own ideology. And so, because there are some things that, you know, basically they're willing to, you know, throw random people in jail just because, you know, they could have, you know, bombed a school even though they didn't. And so there's no absolute, you know, objectivity to their judgment. And so I think an anti-hero is just someone who does anything he wants. It just happens to be something a reader likes. And, you know, and so the archetypal hero, you know, sometimes I listen to Jordan Peterson. He talks about you know, the archetypal hero, and he says, you know, like Jesus is the ultimate archetypal hero, right? And so it's one of those things when you're dealing with archetypal heroes that you know, that's why they're heroes. If they're not archetypal, at that point they become an anti-hero. So
There's definitely some strength to that interpretation. Yeah, I became interested in, you know, thinking about archetypes in stories, just, you know, in English class where you'd have to read books and think about how books are written. I started thinking through some of those things, and I think that's one of the things that helped Pearson jump off a bit. He already was a illustration of the free speech debate, and then when people went to check him out, he also had really fascinating ideas about how stories are told, and that definitely resonates with me as a artist who wants to tell stories. So it's a good thing to, I think it's a good thing for anyone to think about archetypes, as long as you don't get like so high in it that you are only thinking about, oh, my character archetype is this, and you forget to actually like sit down and tell a story. I think there does have to be a natural element to it for your story to resonate. It's got to kind of come from your passion more than your cerebral and analysis of English literature.
yeah, and definitely, I mean, the anti-hero is an archetype, you know, like, I mean, like they're like, sometimes they're like Loki, the Loki archetype, and sometimes they're, you know, they're like, they're like your, you know, your regular rogue character in a D&D campaign, right? They're the backstabber, but you know, you're grateful because they're on your side, right? But so I mean, that's certainly true. I think with yeah, I actually got into like Jordan Peterson stuff because at one point I actually I went to a different school. It was a game design school for a year too. And the thing about game design is all about cognitive psychology. Like you get into game design, you think, wait, I have to like do all this writing about cognitive psychology, because they're using cognitive psychology to manipulate people to play their video games, right? And so I discovered him because because I actually had to do an essay on the psychologists that came after Freud, the neo-Freudians, and Carl Jung was one of the neo-Freudians. And so I looked up Carl Jung, and I ended up discovering you know, Jordan Peterson's psychology videos, and then I found out after the fact that he had done his whole free speech thing. So
what you're saying is you like Jordan Peterson before it was cool.
nope. I was way late. I was a late comer to the Jordan Peterson game.
All right, that would have been perfect though if you just had knowledge of him through reading psychology before, you know, the clean your room memes and everything.
Nope. I was just like, I stumbled upon his videos and I was like, this is cool. Yeah. Wow. He gives me a whole bunch of stuff about, you know, Carl Jung. And then like, then I looked at that interview video after the fact and I was like, oh, wow. So, yeah, no, I discovered his whole controversy. Yeah. Stuff this year, but yeah, I was late to the game on that. I think, cause I got done with that school. I actually took a year off from the Cuber school to go to game design, cause I wasn't sure if I'm addicted to comics though. I'm drawing comics, but I did leave that school for a year to try my hand at game design because I thought it was something else I might be better at. So, but I did come back. So
It does tempt away a lot of artists from the comics field, but you were more interested in the aspect of constructing the game world itself, not just drawing characters for it, correct?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of odd because I'm an artist who's really into tech, and so I can program in Python, and so I can do some other things. So I thought maybe if I focused on both art and programming, I could get some, you know, I was thinking about the money because there's definitely more money in games than in comics, but I miss the drawing too much. And honestly, the school I was at, the art side of things was not as good as the Kubert school. So um, I went back because I love drawing more.
Good for you. I mean, the funny thing for me is I'm now learning Python because I'm interested in getting into the tech field. I kind of want. I never wanted to like rely on just YouTube or art for like my food. So I'm thinking I'm going to learn that skill so I have a good marketable skill and pursue art pretty much full time in my spare time. But so it's kind of interesting that you came out of that, and I'm kind of going into that because I've considered game design as an avenue because since I'm going to have those combined skill sets.
Yeah, and yeah, things to think about with game design, sure, is I mean, yeah, you're thinking about it, it's kind of a weird feel. I mean, it's something when I was getting into it, it was something that I kind of felt it didn't feel right to me because it just felt like manipulating people to make them buy stuff. And so, and that's certainly part of it. I mean, when you're in a video game, part of the reason that they're so cool and so addictive is that someone who understands their psychology designed it to be that way for you. And they tested it with hundreds of people ahead of time to make sure it would do that to you. So it is a field that's interesting, but it wasn't for me. So
That's the thing, because you can have like your, I don't know, Bubble Witch or whatever, where there's lots of pretty colors and they're trying to get you to buy the gold. But you can also get your Chrono Trigger, where what's compelling about it is its story and its world, and there's no micro transactions. So
yeah, and the thing about Chrono Trigger that's really cool in terms of its design is that there's something we in design we call affordances. And there's affordances, what is it? Affordances, signifiers, and feedback, right? So in terms of design, you have your affordances, which are things the character can do, and then your signifiers that indicate what a player should do, and the feedback, which rewards the player or punishes, or I mean, the general feedback of what the player receives from committing the action. And so the cool thing about Chrono Trigger is it offered so many affordances. Like you can take any character that was unique that you ever met and add them to your party, right? So it basically focused on affordances. And then there's something in engagement theory we call discovery, where discovery in gaming theory and engagement theory, it's the reason why you feel cool in Super Mario Brothers when you discover the warp tubes for the first time in level 1-2, right? Mm-hmm. Because of that discovery, you feel awesome because you're the one that found it, right? And so the cool thing about Chrono Trigger is every time you find a new character, you're like, yes, I found another character I can put in my party, you know? So no, Chrono Trigger has a great design for another reason, but it doesn't do the whole gambling game addiction thing too much. And if it does it with character. So
right, as you were talking about signifiers and affordances, I'm just reading The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman, which lays out a lot of this, and he meant it as kind of a critique of bad design in technology and computer design, but it has obvious overlap with art and design, where you have to consider, the total effect of what it is you're making. You can make something that looks pretty, but that doesn't mean it's going to work at all or be functional with how human beings are. So I would highly recommend that for any artists or game designers or computer people in the chat. Look up Don Norman,
or even a writer, because his work with intensity curves, like they can help you structure a narrative on multiple levels too. So, sorry.
No, that's great. It's multiple applications of an idea.
You didn't expect to hear about game design, did you? No.
Well, it has kind of become like the major, bigger than Hollywood as an industry. So it does tend to come up a lot as kind of an interesting aspect of our culture now.
Yeah. It's also one of the reasons, like, I think it's also probably, I mean, people like to blame them for the comics industry, going a little bit under too, because I mean, it is for as far as hours of enjoyment, I mean, video games are probably the best value in town in terms of entertainment. So I mean, they are kind of outclassing all other forms of media. So that's another reason why. I mean, when I was a little kid, you know, I mean, we had our Sega Genesis and our all that stuff, and I discovered comic books, but fortunately, you know, it was before, you know, just before the PlayStation came out. So it's one of those things, you know, once PlayStation came out, you know, comic book sales, I think that might have made comic book sales start to tank too.
Yeah, it is a much more accessible hobby, I think, for young people. I mean, you like flashy lights, you like buttons to press. So, but it also maybe has potential if, because there's so many, you know, new properties being created for video game franchises. I mean, I'd like to read, I don't know, Sonic the Hedgehog or Spyro the Dragon comics with kids in my family. That'd be a blast. So if you look at it as kind of a new frontier for creative potential, it's true, it is competing for kids' time with, you know, other things like TV and comic books, but it's also a potential field for, you know, similar creative talents.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, as far as why, I mean, those comics don't come around as much. I think Archie still owns the license for Sonic, but they're not making them for some reason, or they still have the license for the Sonic comics, but they're not making them. But I don't know. Maybe someone else out there knows if they're still making them, but I haven't seen them.
Sonic has quite a history. I haven't gotten into it yet, but one of my closest friends is a Sonic buff, and he's introduced me to some of it. It kind of, you know, kind of opened up, you know, sort of, you know, simple adventure stories, fun comedy. He was very much a Mickey Mouse sort of a character, and then gradually over time, it started building its own mythos and, you know, world building that was of interest to a lot of people. It's a very different vibe than the video games about Sonic the Hedgehog. So I can see why it built its own popular, you know, cult following over the years. Sonic OCs. You just reminded me of Sonic OCs on DeviantArt, though. Ugh.
Oh God, no! I don't want to even think about, because I mean, there are some Sonic OCs that are infamous that I don't want to talk about just because it's wow. But yeah, no,
So you are now. Are you doing detailing on her costume now?
Yeah, I'm kind of skipping ahead just because I'm thinking about the light source, and I'm drawing and talking at the same time, so I'm just kind of noodling around. So I don't know whether this one. We'll see if I can salvage this, or whether or not it'll go in the trash. But we'll see. I'm basically still thinking about the light source, and then I'm still trying to find the form. By this point, I'm doing a texture because I have that center line to guide me. So.
Well, why throw it out when you can put it up and let us all roast you, Jawbreaker style?
Oh God. No, you guys can do that with the comic book when it comes out, but I'm going to try and give you guys my best, so it'll be a friendly roast, and you'll at least love the story.
I kind of came more from the perspective in art school. What was it? They told us like rules for artists, and these were like 20th century rules for artists, and one of them was save everything. And so I got really enthusiastic about that, and I started saving all kinds of little, you know, scraps of things to draw on or to turn into bizarre little art projects. And then that ended up biting me in the rear end when I had way too many random potential art supplies for creative projects and no space to put it all. So I feel sad a little bit. My inner art historian feels sad a little bit when artists throw away their art, but it does make sense to maintain kind of a clear, pristine workspace.
Yeah. Yeah, and I am having some of that issue right now. I got pages of I got some thrown out layouts that are just piles next to me right here. So I gotta take them out to the trash. But yeah, I got but there's also that rule, that other rule for 20th century artists, which I think is only show your best stuff. And so sometimes throwing stuff away will just avoid, you from seeming like a hack. So.
Right. Well, do you digitize work before you throw it away?
If I'm going to digitize it and keep it, I usually keep the original, because if if it's something I'm actually putting up for someone to see online, you never know if someone's going to dig it and want to buy it. So,
because I ended up like stopping doing. I had a season of my life where I did kind of like weird experimental postmodern art, and then I said, no, I don't want to do this stuff. But I did still keep even like my experimental traditional art projects, and my reasoning is that it gives you a chance to kind of look back and kind of understand how you change things. For me, it's always really helpful to see how I did a scene and then how I later reworked it, or how I reworked a pose. Because then even if like the first one is horrible, I can kind of get a feel for like, oh, well, I was always interested in kind of capturing this aspect of the figure. Do you ever, so when you look at your own work, what's your critical eye like? I mean, you can have the problem of spending too much time looking at your work and thinking about the problems of it. But how do you look at your work and maybe identify what the direction you're going?
As you get farther along, there are points where, you keep some things and you don't know why you keep it. And then when you go back, you're like, oh man, this part's terrible. But then you realize, oh man, I actually like had a good composition in this terribly rendered thing. So I guess one of the reasons you can keep it is like you can reuse that composition on a new piece once you're a better artist. The other thing is the things that excite you that you might forget about, right? Like if I drew BeatDown Girl like 10 years ago and I forgot about her and then I found her on a piece of paper, I'd be like, oh, damn, this was a great idea, you know?
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. But if it did happen, that would be one of those reasons why you would. I mean, I still keep my old sketchbooks, that's for sure. Because if you keep your sketchbooks, you can make fun of yourself at how bad you were. But also, the other thing is there are moments where your drawing skill doesn't match your creativity, right? But there might be a point where you're thinking so much about drawing things right that you lose that spark that of your imagination that you had. So if you still hold on to your sketchbooks, you might find a character or a monster you made and you're like, oh wait, if I do this is going to be an awesome monster, or this design sucks, but if I do this to it, it'll be great. And so that's a good reason to hold on to your sketchbooks or character drawings. Like I would say if you're trying to do like a comic page or something and it just turns out god awful, go ahead and toss it because you don't want anyone to see it.
That's where digitizing kind of became a happy medium for me, between throwing out something that could potentially be useful later or holding on to too many like junky little sketches forever. Because if I digitize it, then I can just put it in a folder that's like 2012 or something and go. Because I did find some really good ideas and compositions looking back at my old work as I was cleaning. And it would be, those are sometimes things you need when you have time to draw, but you're not sure what you want to draw. Your momentary inspirations, you record that in a sketchbook or journal process, and you've got a readily accessible source for things that you could work on or focus on.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. I didn't think about that. That is definitely a good idea, because I may start digitizing now that you brought that up.
Sweet, I've converted you. I've converted you to the digital hoarding.
I don't know about that. I'll try it, and then afterwards I'll let you know how it goes. But I might totally, I might abandon it if I decide it's not worth it.
Right. It doesn't have to be like a, like 12,000 DPI scan or anything. The reason I started doing it was Will Eisner wrote, I think it was graphic storytelling and visual narrative. And there were 2 editions of it. And there's a chapter where there's and some of the pages are entirely different between edition 1 and edition 2. And edition 1 has really rough breakdowns. Like he just sketched it out. And then edition 2 has more polished pencils for it, where it's still loose and expressive, but you can tell he spent a little bit more time figuring it out. And it's almost like 2 entirely different drawing styles. So that's where I got interested in recording my own sketch process, because I'm really interested in the transformation of a drawing from that initial scribble almost to refining it to the finished look. So I kind of look at it as being my own art historian before I part with anything.
Yeah. And the other thing is that part of the reason Will Eisner, I think, wrote those books was he was still figuring it out. Like, yeah, he was definitely responsible for bringing more cinematic storytelling to the books and discussing how the panels break down time and you know, stuff that Frank Miller really explored in Daredevil and Elektra. But it's like thinking and drawing at the same time. Okay, so he's the thing is that I think as he was going through the process and gotten older, because after he had done that book, he'd also done The Building and done like 3 more graphic novels since his Spirit days. And I think part of the reason he did it that way was he was refining what he was refining how he would educate someone in the process. Kind of so I think that might be one of the reasons why he did that, to make it more clear.
And he was a teacher himself. Yeah, I definitely get the vibe that if you look at, you know, early Spirit work and Will Eisner's kind of independent, you know, like life in New York, life in the big city, where he's more free to just pick his own subject. He had a really strong visual transformation where I think he made discoveries and then he kind of like tried variations on these discoveries. So when he would have like a window or an arched doorway function as a panel, then you'd start seeing that crop up a lot more, where he'd continually use windows and doorways as part of his panel composition. So I think well, we could go on about, you know, Will Eisner's style all day, but just a very fascinating and unique person in the history of comics, I think.
Yeah, and he's I mean, he was also very influential. Like I mean, people don't know necessarily the history, but like if you watch a lot of YouTube videos about comics creators, if you're into that stuff, like Jim Steranko and Joe Kubert were both in Will Eisner's studio with him. So Will Eisner was teaching both of them, and so and you know, they're great storytellers. So obviously, and Joe Kubert is one of the most amazing ones of all time. And so it's one of those things where he Will Eisner was definitely always a teacher. So,
and a good interviewer too. I love Shop Talk, where he just has a long conversation with a bunch of who at that time they were rising artists. Now we look back at them as legends. And I think the documentary Will Eisner: Life as a Sequential Artist will actually have recordings of the audio cassette tapes of some of his interviews with legends in the industry. So he was someone who also paid a lot of attention to his peers and the younger generation coming up after him. And I think that helped make that's one of the reasons so many people remember him fondly, is he wasn't just a good artist and a thoughtful artist in his own right. He was someone who was attentive to others in his own field.
absolutely. And yeah, no, that's a good. What was that documentary called again? I think I got to check that out.
Will Eisner: Life as a Sequential Artist. It's a straightforward, you know, kind of like almost like something you'd make an iMovie. Like they have some old footage, they have some old photos, they have a old British narrator. But the bonus feature is literally Will Eisner's full interviews with several artists. So I almost like the bonus feature more than the documentary itself, to be honest.
Sweet. So I'm a little hyper focusing on the drawing right now, just because I'm working on her face. But I think you were mentioning that Tim Lim does like this hatching thing where he hatches. Does he hatch on the eyes or in the eyes?
On the eye itself, and he did it with very, very delicate light pressure. So it was almost like kind of a thin, I don't know what it would be like.
Okay. I'm not. Yeah, because we're so pulled out from her face, I'm not going to do that on here. Yeah. But one place you can do it is on the in the eye socket of the skull. You think about the skull, so I can on her nose. I can go ahead and do those light lines, and then that kind of makes your nose look big. So I'll probably white out some of those, but it's worth a try. I'll do it on the other side too, because that's where the main shadows on the face are without aging her too much. So, of course, right now she might look like she's almost 30 the way I did it, but oh well.
No extra lines, especially on a youthful face.
Yep. Do I have my Pro White with me, or do I? I don't have my Pro White within reach, but I got my bleed proof white. So bleed proof white I'll do at the very end. But
if you want to go into focus mode, people in the chat can roast me for this, but I might need to make like a real quick pit stop. But I can be back in like 1 minute.
Okay, I'll look at your YouTube channel and see if I can answer people while you go. Hello, everyone. I do not see your chats yet, but I will see if I can cover for him while he's away. You know what'd be really funny is if you all left right now and came back, and he'd be like, "Oh no, everyone left the channel," and then y'all come back in. Let's do that. Nah. You guys can tell him about it after the cast is over. I see here, YouTube. Let's take him in a load, guys. Let's see if I can find. Oh, wow. That is my hand. I hate listening to my own voice. All right. Hey, there's people here.
All right, I'm back. Did anyone roast me?
No, but I did tell them all to leave and then come back. Because I thought
so
they'd be.
Serves me right for drinking a bunch of cups of tea right before a live stream.
Yeah, I got a 2-liter filled with water here next to me. I could pull an Ethan and start drinking when I talk. That'd be fun.
Greg has a mic, says, "Can someone let Marm out the back door so he can do his business?" Hey, I found that fire hydrant real quick. Greg has a mic. He's one of my patrons on Patreon, by the way. So thank you, Greg has a mic. Your roast is appreciated.
Nice. Oh, I still have 12 watching. Darn, they didn't take my advice. I thought it'd be hilarious if you came back to 0 viewers. And I'd be like, oh, man, they all left. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, Eve La Renaissance says, Marmaduke's gone, post nudes. This is a family-friendly Christian channel.
Yep,
and Eric said,
Oh, go ahead.
Do you know Eric Hutfless?
No, I don't.
He's a real cool guy. You should get in touch with him on Twitter. He's an artist. Been like a longtime supporter and commentator on. I don't think he has his own YouTube channel yet or anything. But just very thoughtful artist on Twitter who's relevant to the comics community on Twitter and YouTube. So you should definitely check him out.
Sweet, I will. Eric Hutfless.
ARIC.
I am writing it down. I see his name in the chat. All right, I got him written down. Eric Hutfless.
Nice.
So in terms of drawing, one thing I did here that I don't like is I actually made her rib cage a little bit too wide. I'm going to do a separate drawing for you guys just so you know what I'm thinking. But in terms of anatomy, one thing men and women actually have in common is the size of their pelvis. What changes is the size of their rib cage. So like a man will have a rib cage more like this. And then a woman will have a rib cage that's more like an exclamation point. And so one thing I did is I actually kind of made her a little bit more masculine by making her rib cage as well defined and a little bit wider as I did. So I actually I'm going to have to take some white out to clean that up. But that's what I'm thinking about anatomy when I do this stuff. So I am aware of all my mistakes. I'm just sorry that they're live on #1 Marmaduke.
this channel is sometimes this channel feels like a mistake, especially from my early days. You told this story behind the scenes, but the first video of mine you found was me drawing MAGA hats on a U.S. Avengers comic, and I kind of groaned a bit because that was from my like yelling at a phone days for this channel.
Oh boy, yeah, but that was pretty hilarious. I never saw anyone like do that kind of thing for a roast. So I was like, oh my gosh, he's doing that. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. And I also thought, how come only 200 people, were watching this or whatever? But I think it's gotten more views since then. But it was pretty.
I've definitely noticed growth. I mean, I started this channel because I really cared about, talking about, well, not just comics I liked, but I also wanted to talk about, weird politics and art kind of theory. And that became my focus for a while. So I was making videos just because this was something I was passionate about talking about, because I don't like it when art students go to art school wanting to learn about art and they get, they get a whole bunch of sermons. So I kind of wanted to make this channel to address some of those things. So I was just making content because I cared about it. And then, I still remember some of my, first few people when there was just a handful of people. And then, you gradually start clicking with more and more people as they get interested in what you're talking about. You've got a really good way of talking about your work. You could probably break into the YouTube scene talking as you draw.
Yeah, I was trying to do a drawing in Chill Step, but I think I might need I think one thing I'm doing I might talk about is the voice actress, who's a really good friend of mine, who is the voice actress of BeatDown Girl on the video for the Indiegogo. I'm After I get done with school, I may do a channel with her because we're pretty good friends, and it might be one of those things where she talks about culture and stuff while I'm drawing. We have kind of like the kind of back and forth you and I are doing here, but she's pretty entertaining, but she's also we were going to try and get her to come on tonight, but she was afraid she was going to say something too controversial and hurt the movement a little. So she was apprehensive about coming on, and so that's fine. But I may do something with her because I think drawing to chill step music might be a little too somber for people. So
I've gotten a couple comments of people asking, well, if women's pelvises are the same size, why are their hips wider? And I hadn't heard it expressed that way.
It's because their rib cages are actually smaller. The reason there are two things that happen on a female. The even though the pelvis is the same size, the great trocaners on the femurs actually protrude more because females are designed for having children, right? Their pelvises drop forward more towards us, and so that's why. And also because their rib cages are smaller, it looks like their hips are wider. But in terms of like human proportion, if you were to put a male skeleton next to a female skeleton, the result is their pelvises are pretty much the same size. It's their rib cages that are the female rib cage is smaller than the males.
Right. It's proportion versus actual size. Their proportion, women's hips are proportionally larger, but that doesn't mean like they have like, elephant hips compared to men.
Right. Men in general are, this may get me in trouble with some people talking about gender, but men in general are bigger in terms of their upper bodies, and their pelvises are bigger in proportion. I mean, their pelvises are smaller in proportion to their own rib cage, but in terms of actual physical size, they're the same size as a female when you put them side by side.
Well, there you go again with those observable biological facts that we need for our art.
Oh, I know, man. Yep. If you ask me to draw a trans female, she's going to have a bigger rib cage. That's for sure. So one thing I'm doing is because I have bleed proof white here I'm using, which is usually a no-no, but it's what I got around. I have to use a brush to do my blacks on it because bleed proof white will ruin your Copics and your microns. So
For those who have, like, I'm sure some people have heard about the Kubert School just through seeing it advertised. Tell people who are interested in art a little bit about what it's like to be a student there.
Okay, we need yeah, I don't want them to have any blowback because of the association of the comics YouTubers, but I can tell you it's a place where politics is definitely, if it happens between students, but it's not part of the curriculum because it's a school where you are bombarded with so many art assignments a week that you don't have time to even have a political thought. It's a school where basically their philosophy is to throw so much work at you that you're drawing 16 hours a day and then you go to sleep pretty much. So it's one of those things where your work gets better because they just throw so much your way. And then by the end of the year, they have you pull out your first assignment and your last assignment. And you compare the two side by side and you're like, oh, wow, I got so much better. So I can't say anything bad about the school because it's pretty great. I again, in terms of art schools, though, I have to tell you, if I was paying for art school in general, there's so much information on YouTube that I would try your luck there first before considering whether or not you need your handheld to learn art. So
I think financials has to be an important part of it. It's not smart to go $100,000 in debt without a clear plan of how you're going to pay it off.
Yeah, and especially in an industry where the average income is, I mean, the indie artists, sometimes you'll be making like, 22,000 a year, and that ain't gonna pay off a $100,000 student loan, Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where you have to think about if you definitely want to do this and be a professional. I would suggest maybe you do Ethan's channel and check out the Proco YouTube channel for learning how to draw anatomy, and then in terms of learning storytelling, do master copies of all the great storytellers. So like if we were talking about Will Eisner or Frank Miller, you could basically copy their panel compositions, and that'll teach you the storytelling. Or even doing Ethan's, just watching Ethan's channel and then doing Proco to learn anatomy would get you way more ahead than a lot of people. I should have done this entire thing with a brush. That's what should have happened. We still going?
We are still going. Yep. Matt C is kind of pushing back a bit on the pelvis argument. So Matt, I think your point is that women have larger hips. Now, I actually had never heard it expressed the way you expressed it, that they're the same size, but women's are proportionally larger. But what I understand you to be saying makes total sense. The reason women's hips look larger is because everything else is smaller. If everything else is smaller, then the thing that isn't smaller looks larger. Yeah.
You have to draw it from the front. I'll get another. Yeah.
Really, what we'd have to do is we'd have to have like the average woman who's like at the average of the curve for an average sized person and the average man, and then line up their skeletons. And you also acknowledge that they're angled differently, which you can see in kind of like the angle of the legs and how the leg bones connect to the hip bones.
So here, I don't know if we can see this.
I'll click over to you.
Okay. Hello. It's going to take a minute for me to see it in stream here. Oh, you know what? I should go back to my video feed. Okay. This is a problem when I look at the YouTube channel. Hold on.
That's a smart way to do it. Yeah. So that way you see what you see, and you don't have to worry about what the YouTubers see.
Yeah. I only did that so I could talk to people while you were, out in the bathroom. All right. So let's look here. Okay. So it's awfully light from where I'm seeing. And I got whiteout showing through. Okay. So right here, I got this. Oh God, I just drew on it with ink.
Okay. Commit to the bit.
Ah, I meant to do that. Yeah, no, I'm gonna just try it. Okay. So if I was doing a female form here, I got the rib cage here, and then I got her hips from the front, right? So what's going on here is this circle kind of represents her pelvis, right? Um, and then when you draw another, this pencil's awfully light. I don't know if you're going to see this, but when I draw the male shape next to it, physically they're the same size, but the rib cage of the male figure, it's more of a straight down. That's how it's kind of doing this.
Right.
Oh
So
boy.
you're thinking of the man as barrel chested.
Yeah.
And of course, there's variety amongst people. You know,
Yeah.
when you can, a girl could have a ruler shaped body that's a little bit more boyish, or she could have childbearing hips. So
Yeah.
there's obviously variance among individuals.
Yeah, and I was talking more specifically about the skeletons, but yeah, I mean, there are people who, I mean, people learn art in different ways, and depending on who your art teacher is, I mean, I'm basically going off of one of my anatomy teachers too. So, he has a specific way he likes to explain things, so I'm explaining it so in a similar way. So,
Scotty Richard Studio says Croquis Cafe has real-time life drawing nudes here on YouTube. For comic drawing, I'm a fan of Robert Marzullo here on YouTube. Sweet. I'll check those
cool.
out. Oh, Greg has a mic says just backed Beatdown Girl. We moved the needle for you.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. Well, I'm going to give you guys the best book I can, and yeah, I mean, so far, I mean, it'll be at least this good, except it's going to be better because I won't be talking at the same time. So,
Matt C says this stream is actually kind of more interesting than High Council XD. Yeah, go roast Uncle Ethan for me. Tell him that they're missing out on all the fun over here.
I'm glad I'm bringing some content people like to your channel, and I'm glad you're on your A game, I guess. But yeah, no, your channel's cool. I liked it.
Thank you very much.
I think part of it is that the Star Wars thing is an ongoing saga, and so I mean, I don't know how long you could keep talking about the countdown to Kathleen Kennedy getting canned.
Right.
It's like I'm sure it'll get more exciting as it gets closer to the time she's gone, but or if they pull it out from under the rug and she's still here, but yeah, we're talking about art and about drawing and about Beatdown Girl, and so we're new. Yeah. Okay.
I'll be backing Beatdown Girl too as soon as my next paycheck comes in, because I've seen your passion in this project, and you've got a gung ho attitude, and I think that's the kind of thing we need to encourage in the indie market.
I hope so. I'm actually awfully nervous, so this is all pretty off the cuff. So I'm glad it's connecting.
I think that's the appeal of watching people draw, is you're obviously having to focus. So what if you say something that's a little bit off kilter? That I mean, I draw while listening to people, and that divides my focus. But yeah, I think it also adds something. It's like it's a different part of your brain that's at work.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. And immediately I go back to what I'm thinking about. So part of what I'm doing here is, and I kind of failed, but like I'm thinking about going around the form with the shine of her outfit, and then I'm thinking about the texture, what it's made out of, and how it might be either it could be like a tight leather or just a dark local color kind of old school 90s spandex kind of thing. So and then I think about the form. And so one thing I realized I did wrong here is that the legs definitely do come out the bottom of the pelvis. And so I kind of, well, I'm able to cover it up now by just darkening it some more. So, when in doubt, black it out. But
now, I think I mentioned this before we started this live stream, but I scheduled it to be about 2 hours long because I was expecting some family later tonight. So we could probably start winding down. I want to give you a chance to kind of like get to a neat little finishing point, and we should also move the needle one more time for Beatdown Girl for anyone who has only just joined us recently.
Okay, so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to try and speed ink this drawing, and we'll just see how it ends up. And when you speed ink, you just want to get a good flick to your good flick. You're lifting up the brush as you do it. And then one cool fact about the ankles as I'm doing this is you have to remember in terms of physical space, your inside ankle is higher than your outside ankle.
Yep. There's an element of trust to this. You've just got to kind of like trust in your practice enough to see you through it.
Yep. I'm just doing it, and actually it's turning out not as bad as I thought it would. So maybe I should do this with everything. Maybe I'll get better. All right. Except I deviated.
Go ahead.
I deviated from her design, but I'm going to try and fix it. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm saying for those in the chat who may have only joined us more recently, the link to Beatdown Girls Indiegogo is in the description. When you go there, check the stretch goals. There are some great artists you may know who could potentially be working on this project. There's lots of great opportunities to get some good bonus material like posters and a physical edition of the comic. I'm just really happy with how you've constructed it, and you've made it so that people who are on a tight budget may already be backing some great projects. This is a good one to hop on board of and help make it happen for Beatdown Girl, I think.
I would really appreciate it. And yes, I'm one thing you guys want to think about if you guys do your own Indiegogo is look up an Indiegogo calendar. Sometimes they're called Kickstarter calculators, but you look up an Indiegogo calculator or Kickstarter calculator, and they'll tell you about how many people you'll get and about how much you'll actually raise. And what you have to do is basically divide that number into the amount you want to raise, and that'll get you the price for what your what you want to sell your comic book for. Like the reason we're selling it for $10 plus the $5 shipping is that's the average donation we need from the number of backers the calculator said we would have. So, and it turned out it worked. Like we already have full funding. We're just working on making the book better with all these stretch goals now. So. Yeah, this thing's going to turn out to be a disaster, but that's all right. In places, it looks all right.
People can also follow your work on Facebook and Twitter, correct? For updates on Beatdown Girl?
Yeah, I'm posting. I'm also on Instagram at Jake Bihl also. So you can follow him on Twitter at Jake Bihl, and on Instagram at Jake Bihl also. And then I post both to Instagram and Twitter, and then that's pretty much where I'm focusing everything, because Beatdown Girls, most of our interaction with this community is through Twitter. So I really wish this drawing turned out better, but oh well. The rock looks all right, so we'll finish the rock, and then and I'll show you guys the pages I have done, because those I got my time in. So we'll finish this with the pages.
Hey, I'll buy it if you don't want to keep it as a memento of this live stream. All right.
I tell you what, I'll blue line it, and I'll do a really good job on it, and then I'll show it to you, and then you can buy it. All right. So this is our latest page. This is page 7. after she beats the giant perverted robot. Its AI is still alive in her eyes, so they're going to have a funny conversation. I'll give you guys a hint here. Oh, let me see if I can get this in front of you. Okay. So go ahead and read it to you here a little bit. So there's this point where basically she's falling through the air because the robot's body just exploded. And to show that she's not a Mary Sue, she's getting cut up a little from the shrapnel and getting knocked away. And then here her jets ignite. And then next we have her landing in front of the robot eyeball. And the robot eyeball looks up at her and he's like, wait a minute. How come I can't look up your skirt if you're not wearing a skirt? And so, cause he's a perverted robot. And then she's all like scientific about him. And she carries him off to the city where he's going to be data dumped. So, yeah.
I like that there's a sense of humor to your world as well as action and thought about, world building and character development.
Yeah, it's that whole, yeah. I promised that it would be like kind of like Tank Girl. So yeah, absolutely. And and that's it's a plot point. This AI has a personality, even if it's really perverted, and there has to be humor. Like some of my writing, one of my writing teachers would say that the best dramas are comedies, and the best comedies are dramas. And so, if you can properly put in, I mean, it's something that the Marvel movies are actually succeeding at, right? Like in Infinity War, there were some great one-liners, and yet you still have to deal with the emotional crap of Tony Stark watching Spider-Man, disintegrate. And so, I mean, it's one of those moments where, it's one of those things where the comedy and the drama are well balanced. And so I hope I do something that's well balanced like that. All right, more pages.
Can we see BeatDown Girl one more time?
Yeah, we'll do BeatDown Girl on her poster, on one of her potential posters. Except, yeah, one of our stretch goals though is if we make 2,000, Mike Sellers, the legendary comic book inker, is going to be inking the poster for us. See here. Here's one of her getting whacked, and the perverted monster is captured her tentacle style. And he's like, he's going to make some reference to tentacles because, yeah, I'm not going to give away. I can't give away who or what his AI is, but it'll be entertaining. But it's also a plot point, so I can't give it away because it'll be a big spoiler. So, but he's making all these references to like anime and tentacles, and she's like, "What the heck are you talking about?" Because like it's it's the future, and she's just trying to beat him, and she has no idea what he's talking about. And yeah, this is actually an early page of BeatDown Girl that turned up all right. It had some good composition in the frames and spacing, and some of the inking is really good, but her body's way too small for her head. She looks like a kid here. So this page is actually not part of the story. It ended up in the pitch because it was a finished page, but I'm gonna axe this one. But
have you considered doing concept art or maybe behind the scenes things, as maybe not for this one, but for future ones? That's something that's of interest to me, and that is of interest to some people, is to sort of see the behind the scenes process a little.
Yeah, I wanna definitely. I don't have that. I sent you that kit with her character sketch. I don't have her character sketch with me right now, but oh yeah, I do. Hold on a sec.
The other thing you might consider is, I've seen a lot of artists on Patreon. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Okay. Give me 1 second though.
Sure.
Okay, you said you see a lot of artists on Patreon?
Right. A neat practice is to do like kind of a digital sketchbook for, certain patrons, like, $1 patrons or $5 patrons. They get to see kind of what you did for the month, and you just sort of like collect it together as a PDF. So that's something I'm thinking about incorporating for my own work online. Sweet. The full view.
This is her turnaround. This was her design for this project. And yeah, I would definitely love to do concept work. It's one of those things that's hard to get into. I think it's one of those things where you have to be a locational artist. So in the United States, you know, that's the cities for that are LA and New York, pretty much. Also Georgia, because you got Pinewood Studios in Georgia, and that's becoming kind of a Hollywood East location. But it's all, oh, Seattle too. For if you're gonna do it for video games, there's Seattle and Austin. So there's a few locations if you want to get into concept art, but you have to be like, you know, you have to be like in there's Dallas, Austin, Seattle, New York, LA, and Atlanta. So if you're near those any of those centers, your chances are better. I got to figure out actually, yeah, where I'm going to live after this. I'm thinking about Atlanta because that's a good mix of film and game, and you can draw comics anywhere. So, but yeah, in terms of what I was thinking about her character design, again, you got an interesting silhouette with the pauldrons, the thin arms, the larger arms, kind of like Popeye. Now I think about it, and then yeah, and then you got this one. Yeah, this one you got some decent anatomy going on. You got smaller rib cage, the wider hips to her proportion. If I was drawing a man, the hips would be the same size, but the rib cage would be wider. And then you could tell she's buff. She has a good soleus muscle here from the workout of carrying this heavier mechanical stuff around. And then the reason her boots jut out like this is it made the silhouette more interesting. So you could recognize her, you know, if I did like a shot of just her legs, because these boots have this little jut out on the side, I could recognize that's her because that's her silhouette. So that's the reasoning behind the stuff. If you guys are interested in what I was thinking. So
that's neat because it's a little detail, but it's a little detail that's considered.
Yeah.
Oh, Epic Trilogy says looks good. I just backed Beatdown Girl. Excellent, we got you too.
Woo-hoo!
Also,
you.
if you're in the if you're enjoying this live stream, it usually takes about like an hour for it to render and then go up as a normal video. But you'll be able to share this and let your friends know about this whole thing. Even if they were watching the High Council, they can watch the recording of it, and we can probably get some more eyeballs on Beatdown Girl for our boy JC.
Awesome. This one is this was also a considered illustration for the poster. I'm getting tired myself, so we're gonna definitely wrap up soon. But I'm not doing this one because like I was just like in a weird zone and I totally forgot to draw Knuckles, another set of Knuckles on this robot, and I was just like, oh god, what did I do? So, and this one was crazy because I went straight from doing just rough blue pencil right to ink with this. I didn't do any penciling on it, so I was just, yeah, I don't know. So I mean, it's definitely work in progress, but every day I'm knocking out a page. So this page is pretty good. My best page was probably my latest page, but they're going to be at least this quality, and as I get better, they'll be at least this quality. But as I get better, you know, the bad pages will be thrown out and replaced with better pages. So by September 5th, I should have a good book for y'all because I'm trying to knock out a page a day here. So
I love it. Well, this has been an excellent live stream. I am excited for Beatdown Girl. You've got passion, you've got energy, you've got dragon energy, and I'm loving it. So here's hoping that Beatdown Girl is just the first of many projects we see from you in the future. What would you like to leave us with, JC, for us to think about for Beatdown Girl and your work?
Gosh, you guys have been amazing. Like I stumbled into this community, the comics YouTuber community and their fans. You guys are like the nicest people ever. And I think anyone who says that you guys are, you know, crazy or a bunch of, you know, if they say something like, if they say you're a bunch of racists, it's not true. You guys are like the nicest guys ever. And, I think the only way that, we're going to beat the side that's trying to control our content is to be kind, be respectful, and just, you know, just keep making great work, and we'll just outclass them. So
I think that's a fantastic thing to leave off on, and it sums up everything that I think that good art and good storytelling is about. It excels based on just how excellent it is. It doesn't need to go after, people or bully anyone. You just demonstrate by your work ethic and the beauty of your work what it is you're all about.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your work with us. Thank you for drawing for us. That made this a lot more exciting for me personally. I love watching drawing. So, Beatdown Girl, I am saying number one Marmaduke fan, seal of approval. I'm enthusiastic. I want to see this succeed, and I want us to move the needle for it. So, uh, I'm interested in this character. I think you've demonstrated that you're a thoughtful person and how you've considered the different aspects of this character in building your world. So good job, man. And here's to many more opportunities for you to interact with YouTubers like me, and for us to continue following your work.
I just realized one more thing. So July 14th, I am doing another live stream. Both me and Comic Rebirth are going to be drawing at the same time and talking about Beatdown Girl. So July 14th at 9 p.m. on the Comic Rebirth's channel. So
dope. I'll go check that out. All right. Thank you very much. To everyone in the chat, thank you for joining us. Please do share this video to help share the Beatdown Girl Indiegogo with more people who might be interested in it. If you can't afford to fund it right now, just consider sharing the project to let more people know about it. I love you guys. I'm so happy to have my guest tonight, and I think we're going to have to call it a night there. So good night, everybody.
bye, guys.